Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the April 10th, 2023 meeting of the Planning Board. Can we please first stand for the pledge?
I pledge allegiance.
Good.
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First, just for the record, want to make sure everybody understands, we get a lot of emails about projects in front of us. I don't want anybody to think they go unanswered or unlooked at. We do review everything, and a lot of this gets put into the record. We try to do our best to make sure that public comments or questions at the public hearings or the public informational hearings get recorded. That's the most important part of these meetings when you want input. That is the time where it's a public record, and we want people to make sure they get their questions on those meetings so we can get you answers. We get, again, a load of emails. A lot of people have very strong concerns about projects in front of us. We understand that. That's why we are trying to do these more frequent meetings, especially with some of these more sensitive projects. But we want you to understand that the emails are received, they are read, and they do go into the record. Anyway, that being said, we'll start with correspondence. Any concerns or questions?
None.
No.
All good.
Good?
Nope.
Counselor?
Nope.
John?
Nothing here.
Okay, then we will move on to the meeting minutes. These are for March 8th, 2023 and March 27th, 2023. Any concerns, questions, or comments? Additions?
No. None.
Motion to accept.
Motion second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I do want to say, Nancy, you do a bang-up job. We really appreciate you, as did Robin and everybody else, too. All right, we'll move into the regular portion of the meeting. First on the agenda, we have Burger King. This is a decision statement, locations 385 Downing Drive.
Good evening, everyone.
How are you?
Good. How's everybody? We had a nice Easter holiday. Anyhow, I guess I've read it over. I only, and as long as you guys don't have problems, I certainly don't. I just have one question, though. The striping for the walk from Downing to the building. We have it on a diagonal. You want that absolutely perpendicular, because then it'll be crossing over the drive-through lane. So, from Downing, there's a old concrete pathway. Downing Street.
Well, the part of it that comes from the parking lot, we're not going to do that part, right? No, that part we're doing, but the one to the left.
This part we're not.
We're not, right.
All right, and this is okay the way it is, or you want that to be?
Well, I think maybe when it gets to where the travel lanes are, it may turn perpendicular to the sidewalk and it just head straight for the sidewalk.
Okay, all right.
That's all.
All right. I just want to get it clear, so. I think that was the only question I had on the decisions. Everything else was fine by me, if it's fine by you.
The board had a chance to review the documents?
Yes.
Any issues, concerns?
No.
Counselor?
Nothing from me.
John?
Nothing further.
All right, then. Do I have a
Appreciate it.
motion to declare the planning board the lead agency?
Motion. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
In front of us, we have a neg deck for the same project. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Finally, we have a resolution approving an amended site plan for the Burger King. the same address. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
You're all set. Okay. Next, we're going to move on to the Gardenia Hotel. This is a public hearing. Location is 1952 Commerce Street. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
Motion. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Well, good to see you all again on this, what I think is a very exciting project for the town. For those that don't know, this actually been in the works. I guess it's probably about a year and a half, so somewhere along those lines. Anyhow, the idea is this is on the corner of Commerce and Veterans Road. It is the location of what used to be both a Mulvaney Real Estate and then I think an insurance broker. It is a very modest, small, the existing house is very modest, small, but is noted in the overlay district as being one of the remaining original structures for Commerce Street or thereabouts. So it's probably a 1920s, somewhere around there type of construction. Anyhow, the idea is to put a boutique hotel with 16 rooms with a rooftop bar. It is a use that it appears in the Yorktown Code only in the overlay district. And this particular project has been reviewed both by this board in work sessions and certainly by the town board in looking over the adoption and amendments to the overlay district, which, again, this is exclusively a use within the overlay district. We are going to rely on some of the flexibility that you do have in the overlay district. I think the major concerns or issues with the project were its visual presentation, which I think everybody liked. There was the issue of raising or removing or relocating the old home that is on there. I think that issue has been fully vetted, and I think the conclusion has been that although it may be a throwback towards the turn of the last century, that structure has very limited use and utility, and over the years has been modified to the point where it really does not hold much of a historical significance. The design of the proposed boutique hotel is compliant with, excuse me, I apologize for that, is compliant with the code in the sense that it is a desire of the within the regulation for any new development to pay some homage and respect to the historical architecture of the town. I believe this structure does that. The other issue, I believe, was concerned parking. The code does provide for flexibility in that regard, and we have advocated in the past that in this particular area of town there's ample parking, and that's been proved over and over again. If anyone's attended any of the activities at the field, the Jack DeVito Veterans Memorial Field, which accommodates quite a big crowd on summer concerts, et cetera, and there's never been an issue about parking at all in the area. Matter of fact, I think one of the issues for Yorktown is that we have more of asphalt parking than we do have active uses. So we believe that it's a very good project, and it sets the tone for the future of Yorktown in terms of creating a walkable and aesthetically pleasing downtown. the building has been painstakingly designed in order to achieve really the highest aesthetic appeal, both to hopefully set the tone for future development and to pay homage to the colonial past of the town of Yorktown. So that's essentially the project, and I can bring the engineer up to go through the details if you would like, as to parking and the other more technical aspects of the project. Sorry.
Sorry, Tom. Good evening, Joseph Rena, Principal Site Design Consultants. As Michael had stated, the location of the building is at the intersection of Commerce Street, at the northeast corner of the intersection of Commerce Street and Veterans Road, and currently contains a small structure which will be demolished as part of the application. The existing parking area will be maintained and utilized for the project. The proposed building will overlap the footprint of the existing building and will also overlap some of the parking where there will be some parking that will be under the second story on the left side of the building, this area right over in here. Thank you. Okay? Thank you. Sorry, everybody, but this is really hard to manage here. Okay. So the main entry to the building is at this location here. It faces Veterans Road. The Commerce Street side of the building there's a stair tower and the prominent clock tower feature of the building. Outside the building on the Veterans Road side is a patio area which is adjacent to a cafe, which will be part of the first floor of the building. As Michael had stated, we're providing 18 parking spaces where 27 are required by the code, but we believe that there is a generous amount of available parking off-site. The location of the building will require variances from the planning board, which are within the power of the planning board to grant. This corner of the building is 6 feet off the property line, where 15 feet is required. And at the side yard from Commerce Street, 10 feet is required, and we're providing 9 foot 6 inches. So that's going to require a variance by you. So as stated, the main entrance is here. It's a 3-story building with a rooftop amenity. A little later on in the presentation, I'll take you through the building itself and into the interior of the building. There's a connection from the underground parking area, which is this, to the front door. There will also be an access from the underground parking area for registered guests that will be able to get in with their room key from this side entry point here. We're using the existing entrance but widening it. There'll be a little median here. It's going to be a flush median. It's going to be flush with the parking area, so when a trash pickup is occurring, there'll be no issue with the truck getting in and out of the site. This is where the trash containment area is going to be as soon as you come in on the left-hand side. The project is in the New York City DEP Main Street designated area, so we're going to require a stormwater permit from them. We've prepared a SWIP which we'll be submitting shortly. Either it's in final form, just needs to be put together. It'll be submitted either in the next couple of days or so. The site is serviced by sewer, water, and gas. All utilities will be underground. We are also extending the Commerce Street streetscape around the Veterans Street side of the site, which will be the brick paver buffer and then the concrete sidewalk. These squares that you see here are where new trees will be planted, and the light poles, one here, one here, and one here, will be the identical light poles that are used on Commerce Street. The site is going to be landscaped. It's going to have a full landscape treatment. And with that said, I'm going to bring Abigail Adams up from A2 Landscaping, and she will take you through the landscape plan.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay.
For the record, Abigail Adams, registered landscape architect, owner of A2 Land Consulting out of New Fairfield, Connecticut. I'm just going to start in the northeast corner there. We're screening the refuse area with green giants along the property line and some Schwalbe Japanese hollies. For interest, we're adding specimen limber pine, as well as snowflake viburnum and some mountain laurel. Then we are, should I just... I probably don't even need to. I probably don't need to necessarily. Thanks, Joe. We're actually,
Zoom in?
yes, let's zoom in. We are planting between the sidewalk and the parking areas with a variety of evergreen shrubs, rhododendrons, and hydrangeas. We also have some ornamental grasses there. Along the streetscape on Veterans Road, we're proposing little leaf lindens at 4 to 4.5 inch caliper, which is the same street tree that I believe was used on Commerce Street. So we wanted to keep continuity there along the streetscape, and we're planting those trees at a little bit larger size for somewhat instant gratification along the streetscape there. In front of the building, actually I should say to the south, between the hotel and the neighboring property up at the top of the sheet, we are screening with green giants along that property line, leaving some lawn in between so that we can have maintenance around the building. In that southeast corner there, we have magnolia, Lacothway, and some hydrangea. And then in front of the buildings and around the perimeter along the streetscape, we're proposing boxwood, spirea, azalea, some ornamental grasses. We also have some varieties of astilbe and daylilies there, along with some ground covers. And then in front of the building along Commerce and a little bit in front of the building on Veterans, we're allowing room for annuals to be planted so we can have some seasonal change out there 4 times a year and that. So trying to, on this small site, get a lot of bang for our buck, trying to plant as much as we possibly can just to really beautify the corner of this intersection.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So as you can see, Abigail did a great job with the landscaping. I think it's going to really enhance the site. Okay. All right. Yeah, you want to see if you could prop them up somewhere, on a table maybe.
Samples of what the exterior material is going to be. Real stone and the brick.
That's the actual color of the brick that we were talking about?
Yeah, so that's a color, and you can see there's another shade mixed in.
Yes.
So it'll be predominantly the red with that little darker shade mixed in. So the as I stated, this is a 3-story building with This is the first floor level with parking underneath this portion of the building. 2 stories of rooms, and then guest rooms, and then the top floor is where you'll have the rooftop amenity. So quickly to take you through just the floor plans, this is the first floor. This is the entry or reception area where guests will check in, or anyone that is going up to the rooftop would come in this main entrance here and access the elevators or the stairwell. The guest room floors will be blocked to anyone that does not have a fob or a key to get into that floor. So that'll be restricted to guests only. But anyone that wants to go up to the rooftop will be able to do that with no problem. So this area here is going to be a lounge for the guests, and they could get breakfast there. It'll more or less be sort of a little cafe, similar to what you would see if you go to if you go to a hotel. This will be accessible to the public also, if they would like to come in and get a little muffin and coffee and sit out on the patio. The 2 guest room floors are identical. Each one will have one king suite, one queen suite, one ADA compliant queen suite, one junior suite, and 5 king bedrooms. So these are the king bedrooms here. You can see it only has a bed and bathroom facilities, where the suites have a lounging area besides the bedroom and bathroom. So the rooftop will have an indoor and outdoor component. The section facing the corner or on the Commerce Street side, that will be an outdoor area for patrons who are using the bar top tapas bar, which will be on this interior space here. They will come up through the elevator here or the stairwell, which would be at this point here. This is a little kitchen area here, and then you have restrooms here. This side of the roof will be used for the rooftop units. The heating and cooling units will be up on this side of the roof here. This stairwell is really for emergency egress. But it will be a prominent feature, as I said, the clock tower, which you've all seen, but we'll see that again. Okay. So these are just the flat elevations of the building. This is the front elevation facing Veterans. This is the one facing Commerce. This is facing the field and track, and this one faces the Commerce building. So. And I'm sorry that the architectural designer couldn't be here tonight, so I'm going to do my best to take you through this. We'll start at the bottom here. So the first floor and the sitting wall, which is around the patio, that will be the stone, veneer, which you just saw. Above that, you're going to have it's going to be broken up by either a granite or limestone coping. And then you'll go into the brick. So the remaining floors will be mostly brick. The windows will have a limestone trim around it, and this area between the upper and lower windows will also be limestone panels. At the corners, at these 2 corners here, I'm sorry, these 3 corners here. You will have brick coins, so it's basically the same brick, but it's going to be pop out from the main facade. So there'll be a nice feature to finish off those corners of the building. It's only going to be these corners here, not on the main tower or on the clock tower. There will be a gray brick that will separate. Before the gray brick, you'll have another limestone or granite coping, and then you'll have this gray brick which will break up the lower brick area with the black aluminum coping that's going around the roof line. Over the front door, there's going to be an accent feature encased in the limestone or granite, whichever Mr. Chow decides to go with. And then that brings you up to all the windows are going to be black frame windows and divided light. Once you get up on the roof, as you can see, there's going to be a glass curtain around the rooftop area. We're considering as an option to be further discussed to continue that on this side here. Once you're on the roof, again, you'll have this section here is the portion of the indoor area with sliding doors or articulating doors that are going to open up onto the rooftop during the nicer weather. This area here is the kitchen and bathroom areas. This is, for now, this is just faux glass, so it's only to carry over some symmetry from this side, but it's not going to be real glass. It's just going to appear that way from the outside. And this thing keeps moving on me. So when you get up onto the roof level here, this is a standing seam black metal roof. And this is also a standing seam metal roof, which will have the appearance of a copper patina look. And again, this is going to be, one of the prominent features of the building, where you're going to have the clock on three faces on the sides on this side of the building, the Commerce Street side, and also the Commerce Street side coming from the fire department. So, and I'll just, sorry, okay.
So the color is off, right? I mean, the color is
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
going to be that red brick. Can you hold that up so this way people can see it in the camera?
Sure. Yeah, the problem is, with these programs, it's so
I know,
hard
no, I
to
get
get them
it.
to, so this is the color of the brick.
And what is going to be the kind of makeup of it? It's going to be like
Random.
60-40, with a red.
I don't know, to be honest with you, but it's
Fine.
going to be random, but it's predominantly going to be the red. So the only other thing I wanted to point out on the Commerce Street side of the building is this staircase. It's going to have a tinted glass here, but it's going to be not your standard staircase. It's going to be decorative, so it won't look like you're just looking into a stairwell. It'll actually be an architectural feature to the building. So these are some of the 3D views which we showed you the last time we were before you. Again, it's a bird's eye view here, street view looking from the opposite corner of Commerce, in front of the where the kitchen place is now. This is looking from what if you were standing at the parking lot to the community center, you'd be looking at it this direction. Again, this is a close-up view looking at the corner, and again, another bird's eye view looking from the outside, looking a little farther out. These views represent what it would look like in the evening when the building is lit up. Again, the same views. Okay, so now we're going to get into the interior of the building. So this is the lobby area. As the doors are to my back in this, and you're walking right up to the to the check-in counter. You can see the fish tank on the right there. You go around, wrap around this side, and that's the lounge area. Oop, a little too fast. Let's just pull back a little bit. Again, the elevators are to the left. And these are the doorways that would take you out into the parking underground, under-story parking area that's only accessible if you have a guest key. Another view of the lobby area, looking towards the lounge. Again, this is another area in the lounge on the other side of the fish tank. Coffee, whatnot. This is looking out the windows to the patio area on the Commerce Street side, on the Veterans Road side. And just some more views of that. Okay. All right. These are guest rooms. This would be a suite. And this is the rooftop terrace. This is an aerial view. This would be the interior space, the bar area. This is the door to the kitchen. Elevators and stairs over in this point here. This is again in the interior with your back to the Veterans Road side of the building. This is looking with your back to from the at the elevators, looking out towards the outside area. Now we're out on the outside area. This is the rooftop area where you would be looking overlooking Veterans, the corner of Veterans and Commerce Street. This wall here, this decorated wall here, and this overhang is that patina roof that goes around the clock tower. So this is actually the clock tower that's on here on to the right. And that's it. Lastly, as requested, we did a 3D model view, which we can see the relationship between the proposed building and some of the other buildings on Commerce Street. This is the Capellini Cultural and Community Center, 7-Eleven here. This is where the Guiding Eyes is, and the kitchen place, Chase Bank. This is where Starbucks is, and this is that smaller strip shopping center there, and then this is the other bank, whatever it is. Is it TD or Chase? No, that's not
Wells
Chase.
Fargo.
Wells Fargo.
Wells Fargo. So with this, I can give you any view you'd like to see. So this is how it looks from.
Incredible.
And it's a little hard for me to manipulate this because I'm not used to it. So.
And one of the important things to point out, particularly with these renditions, is that actually the building lends itself proportionally to the surrounding other buildings, where right now the house that's there is proportionally quite small, and you know, quite. This actually will be a great visual enhancement. In terms of bringing in both softening what is the Commerce Building and actually the YCC. I think it works very well in terms of putting something of that size actually softens up the other two buildings, which right now are just kind of glaringly large as compared to the house that's there. So we think that this is a huge enhancement to the streetscape for Commerce Street and Veterans.
I went a little too far here. So if there's any particular view you'd like me to move to, I'd be glad to. It's like I said,
Just can make a comment, one more, or a question.
Could we see, Joe, if we were on Commerce Street looking up to the north, or I'm sorry, to the west? If we were down by Starbucks looking back at the building?
at start, in front, okay. I got the
From
blue,
the,
I got the blue wheel here, hold on.
Pilot's license.
Roof of the Kaplan,
Stand on the curb.
It's such a
sniper view.
cumbersome thing to operate because it's such a big file. Okay.
I think I'm getting dizzy.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm just kidding.
So is this the way you want to?
Yeah, if you were coming down the street, kind of like the streets, yeah, that's it, yeah.
That's the view. And I think there's a way to actually have it move through, like,
Yeah, that's,
I don't
this
know,
is
I
fine.
don't
This-
even want to go there. So, yeah, that's how it would look coming down the street.
Again, I think it's, it actually proportionally fits well, much more so than the existing house, and actually, it softens otherwise these two big buildings quite a bit. And creates
So
that
again,
kind
the
of
color
downtown feel that you want.
The color doesn't do it justice there, because it would actually blend in more.
Yeah, it would be closer to this, correct.
So, Joe, just a quick question, and it may not be to scale, but Veterans Road is 2 lanes on one side, 1 lane in front of the hotel, right?
It's they got a turning lane.
Two
coming
lanes
out.
at the very end up here.
Are you saying there's a turning lane
When
here?
you're turning on to Veterans Road off of Commerce,
Yeah, yeah.
1 lane, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And the main entrance is pretty much right there. So if an Uber driver or friend or family are dropping somebody off, are they going to?
They would pull into the parking lot.
So essentially, you'll have like no standing signs there, right in front of the front door.
We could put that. That's not a problem. I mean, that's
Not that anybody
that's a
pays
heavily
attention
used,
to 'em, though.
That's a heavily used access point. I mean, we could surely we could put that type.
Is
of
there
sign.
anywhere in the design where you could do a little bit of a cutout without upsetting the sidewalk path? A little bit of a cut in to so
Yeah,
a car could pull
not
over?
with the room we have, because right now the sidewalk treatment goes right up against our patio wall there.
Yep.
So we really don't have, further down we could do that
Yeah,
over
'cause
here, but at that
Veteran
point they
Road
could
widens down that way.
Yeah, and we discussed early on about bringing that lane in there, but I think the highway superintendent objected to it at the time. I don't know if that's changed since.
We're meeting with them tomorrow.
Okay, yeah.
Because, I mean, while you're at it, that would be a real good thing to kind of resolve.
Yeah, because this is much wider than it needs to be.
Right.
I mean, you need it wide at the turn because traffic, delivery traffic to Acme, a lot of the big trailers come this way. They'll cut through and they'll make this turn here and go in the back way because it's easier for them to maneuver. So you need that width in here, but as you get past that, you really don't need that width. It's much wider than you need it to be. And that would open this up and provide a little more green space in front of the building, and maybe even expand the patio a little more. That's all I have.
Anything from the board? No questions here.
So this is a public hearing. Any members of the public want to come up, ask your questions? Just give us your name for the record.
Good evening, Jay Kopstein. First, I think that the width of that road should not be changed. You've got school buses that use it, trucks make turns. When Dave Paganelli spoke about it here, he suggested that the width not be reduced. I have a question and a comment. My question is this site going to have backup electric generation? My comment is, and I know it's getting into the weeds, but I found sometimes you have to get into the weeds. If the project is approved, the site plan and resolution specifically should prohibit the owner, management, valet service, etc., from reserving parking spaces in the public parking spots at the cultural center. Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Anybody else? Please.
Okay, my name is Gerard Longarzo. I think this community is a wonderful place. I truly do. Two of my children live in it. And I just have a couple of questions. And these are general questions regardless of where a structure such as this will be built. First of all, I didn't hear any talk about security, either in the hotel itself or in the parking area. And security should always, if people are not safe, if they don't feel safe, that undermines the reputation of an area, which we want to maintain, of course. During construction, once again, anti-noise strategies, anti-dust strategies, I would think that construction such as this, in terms of people living in the area or commercial establishments in the area, be a heck of a lot of noise. And basically, how would that be abated? A lot of dust. How would that be abated without having people wear earplugs or face masks? And maybe this is more reticent of some of the communities that I've seen take a turn down into the toilet. What protocols are going to be in place to make sure that certain hourly transactions are not occurring? Okay? Because this is very, very important. You want this place to be a quality place with a good reputation. You certainly do not want to take it out that this is a place where the world's oldest profession is plying its trade. You do not want that to occur. So those are my concerns, which I share with you, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, good evening, Susan Siegel. Okay. First, let me say that I certainly support the idea of a hotel in Yorktown. I know it's been talked about for probably the 50 years that I've lived here, and I know personally how my family had problems finding a place to stay when they were visiting me. So I do support the hotel rooms. I'm not so sure about the bar and grill on the top because I basically don't patronize bars, so that's not an issue for me. But I am disappointed that in the 2 years this application has been before the board, you've never once had any discussion about the size of the building and its massiveness. And we're now at the 11th hour, actually beyond the 11th hour, when you're pretty much ready to approve it, give or take, a minor tweak here and there. I'm not an architect, so I can't, and this is the first time in all those 2 years that we've seen any kind of rendering that puts the building in relationship to the other buildings, both the 1940 Commerce Street, and I don't think that's an accurate representation of the building, and then the buildings across the street. And I'm also not sure if they're to scale, because I would think that the hotel building is going to be taller with the roof tower and with the roof clock and the top, the Commerce Street. But I can't see how this massive building softens the site, as opposed to what's there now. You may not like the house that's there now, and I'm not commenting on the architecture of this building, but it certainly is one hell of a lot bigger. And so to me, it can soften it. But again, because the public has not had an opportunity to comment on this in the 2 years, because all of your sessions have been work sessions and there was no public informational hearing, I'm making a comment, but it's almost too late. I have a question about the parking. Has the applicant provided detailed numbers on the required number of parking spaces according to the code that calculate in the square footage of the restaurant area up on top, and also the tea room cafe, on the bottom? And also, how many off-site spaces will be needed? And this is probably a question that maybe the attorney can answer. how do you deal with the liability when people who are patrons of the hotel or the bar, okay, park either at the YCC across the street or they park in the private parking lot for 1940 Commerce Street, which is on the south side? What happens if there's an accident in any of those parking lots? Who is liable? The owner of the parking lot or the hotel, because the person came from the hotel possibly in an inebriated state? I don't know the liability issue. So I just raised that question. Also, I think it was said the term elevated was used in the plural. So will food for the tea room, breakfast area, cafe on the first floor be brought down from the kitchen from the top floor? So those are basically my questions. But again, I wish that the public had had an opportunity to comment on the size of the building long before tonight's hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Dan Strauss. I just want to clarify one thing about the road. On Veterans Road, is that going to be narrowed?
As per this plan, no.
No. Is the road going to be narrowed?
You just said no.
No, it will not be. It should not be. Because
How many
the
times did you
plan
say no?
there doesn't necessarily indicate whether that one lane in front of the hotel on Veterans Road is going to be narrowed. I would hope it is not going to be narrowed. I got the impression before that that was up in the air. But that should not be narrowed. There is only one lane, as Mr. Garrigan pointed out. There are trucks that come around that corner, and the road does not, that one lane, as it goes to the school, does not widen appreciably. It widens, but not appreciably. I know the area. The other thing is the size of the building. And to Susan's point, as far as I know, there has been no discussion or input from the public, other than emails, I guess, as to the size of the building. And for me, I'm not saying that the architecture and the structure isn't nice, but for me, that does not, what's the word, make it more eye-friendly. You're jamming a pretty large building into a small lot. That's my feeling. Again, the traffic, there's substantial traffic around there. And again, to Mr. Kopstein's point about the parking, there should be no specified use at any time of the parking that is not on their property. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, how are you? Jenny
you?
Sunshine. Just happened to be here tonight and would love to comment on this project. Of course, families would love to have a hotel here in Yorktown. Microphone down? Okay. I'm short. Yeah, everybody needs a hotel. That's true. But this location is not my favorite for a hotel in Yorktown for a variety of reasons. First of all, even though it's pretty, I do think that it is too large for that spot. It's too tall and it's too large. I also think that the present business or house that's on there now is actually quite pretty and fits our town much more normally. And there's actually some beautiful trees there now, which will be cut down, and those are mature trees. So that's upsetting to me, especially considering we're losing a lot of trees and all of the very many different building projects that's occurring now and also soon to be in the future. Just a couple of comments, though, logically. If it is a popular place, actually, I think the rooftop is too small. if you really get a lot of people that really want to have a good time, it didn't really look like you could put that many people up there to be able to have a good time. So I just thought, maybe a better location where you could spread out and make a bigger area on the top. I mean, that's a fun date night, to go up there and have some fun. But it looked like you could fit maybe like 20 people comfortably or something like that. So at least on the outside part. So just thoughts on that. Also, I know we're not talking about Underhill right now, but when I did listen to the Underhill, talk that you guys gave regarding all the trees that would be removed, one of the things that was said at that moment was that, if a tree is non-native, then it should be slated for removal, or that was an excuse that was given to remove a tree because it was non-native. But I did hear some of the trees that were listed by the landscape architect didn't sound native to New York. So maybe we want to rethink that and only put native trees in. So that's another thought. Okay, so the main thing I wanted to get at is as a mother's perspective, because I've raised my kids here for the last 20 years, and there is a lot of parades that happen in our town that you walk right past that and make a right and you go over to the field. And so, I mean, like 4 or 5 different parades that families enjoy in our town. And so here's a couple thoughts about that. First of all, are there any safety concerns when you're dealing with lots of children and parents around that area? People usually stand on that corner to observe the parade. Is there really space to do that? Also, would the hotel be friendly to people wanting to use the bathroom? Because you're going to have people wanting to go in there to eat snacks and go to the bathroom and use it and be in there. And there's hundreds of people. So I don't know how a hotel would feel about that, because people are going to want to do that, especially since Turco's is not where it used to be, or Uncle Giuseppe's. Because that was I know it seems a little far, but when people have parades, I know you look confused. When people have parades, because I also walked in the parades, people park. Like if you're in it, you park over by where Turco's was, or maybe by Kmart, because it's a central location, because usually you start the parade like over on Front Street. So at least when you get to the end, you can walk back halfway. And Turco's was the old Turco's, was a great bathroom location for that. Oftentimes the Yorktown stage is not even open to go to the bathroom. So believe me, moms know all the good bathrooms that you have to keep kids happy, because they are not going to use a porta potty. Okay. The other issue I just wanted to say as a mom is Yorktown stage is a very heavily used place for recitals. Dance recitals are there all the time. You also have people doing early voting. You also have lots of shows and events and stuff like that. And so every parking space is usually already filled anyway with all of that stuff happening at Yorktown Stage. So if you're going to you really cannot use, I know other people brought that up, but like even people walking across the street after dance recitals, kids are everywhere with their parents and they're walking across the street. And like, is that going to be dangerous with, all that hotel being in that space and also other people using that space at that same time? So I think I covered everything that I was thinking of. I did. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else? No?
I don't know if you'd like me to address any of the issues. I think maybe we can.
Yes, it would probably. I took some notes.
Before you get to that, I just want the record to reflect that we did get a written comment as well from Kathleen Platani in reference to this property.
Yeah, that's the
That's gonna be part of the record.
owners of the kitchen place, new kitchen place that was redesigned, right? On the corner, catty corner to this property.
Yeah.
Yeah, I read it with some interest because I guess they
And Lynn Briggs also, Lynn Briggs also put in a memo about the property not being suitable for other uses. She explored uses with the rec department, and they weren't interested.
Other rec uses.
What's that?
Rec uses.
There was a
Offices or whatever.
there was a idea of somebody floated the idea of actually relocating that structure so that
Yeah.
Parks and Recs could use it for office space somehow.
And just for the record, the town has retained the historical consultant to take
Yeah.
a look at it.
You know what? If he's worth his salt, I know what he said already, so I'm not going to worry about it.
That, just so for the record, that's being done. Just a few quick things. There's a few variances you said required from the planning board. You want to go through those variances?
We can. One of I think we went through most of them. The only one that would seem to be there's a height variance. There's side yard setback variances. I think where there's zero, once you create a side yard, you're supposed to create a minimum of 10 feet, but you actually could have a 0 side yard. And we've decided to create something in between the 10 and the 0. So, the code kind of contradicts itself at that point. But if you go across the street to the kitchen place, a new kitchen place in the Guiding Eyes building, that's butts up against wall hours. So that's the kind of thing that you could have.
So is any variance required for square footage, the size of the building?
No.
Not the height?
No.
So the massing of the building itself complies?
Yeah, and I think, look, beauty sometimes is in the eye of the beholder. I've got two
Excuse
people
me one
that...
second. Oh, I'm sorry.
There's two people here that don't like the size of the building. I think that, again, a very strong argument can be made that the existing structure sort of seems to add a place between these two other large buildings, which is the Commerce Building and the YCC building. When you're looking to create a streetscape, when you're looking to create which is one of the desires of the overlay zone, and the architectural treatment of the streetscape treatment that with the lights and the sidewalks and everything else, you actually, if you go, there's a town in Indiana that was very successful in creating what is a Main Street streetscape, and you've put your bulk out towards the street with the parking in the back. Matter of fact, if people are familiar with malls that were made in the 1970s, they tried to create the streetscape indoors rather than outdoors. But this actually, if you want to be historically correct as to what a historical Main Street would look like, this is actually what you're looking to do. This is what you're looking to accomplish. You want building, not parking. You want building to the street so that I have the Grace Building across the street. Everybody says it's a nice porch, but it used to be, and everybody now has decks, so they go behind the house, but it used to be you had front porches, so you were out in the community, and that's kind of exactly what this type of architecture pays homage to. It puts itself out into the community. I think that the size of the building is absolutely appropriate for the site, much larger than what's there now, but I think in the long run, that's exactly what was contemplated by the overlay zone. As far as the quality of the patrons of the hotel, you can't really do much about the the town is cautioned not to get too deep into the operational aspects of any business. As far as what it's who's going to use the bathroom, who's going to stay overnight. And I think those are all interesting tidbits, but certainly not for consideration of the planning board. Parking. If you're familiar with the Heights area, it's a sea of asphalt at this point. It really is. It's actually too much, and it has been too much. So there are a lot of events, as Ms. Sunshine said. There's parades, and we're very proud of our parades in town. And I know the Christmas parade actually attracts quite 10 deep, but there's never been a problem of anybody parking.
If you look at the summer concert series,
and
I've had children go to the Yorktown stage for recitals, or the car shows they have down there where they close the blocks. The one thing down in that area, I think we've all talked about this in the past, is there's a lot of parking. And the way parking is looked at is being looked at from a planning perspective very differently. And I got to think this use is mostly a nighttime use,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So you're not going to see generally people hanging out in a hotel during the day unless they're going somewhere. The neighboring property, predominantly a weekday use, right?
Yes, yes, and yes, and interesting, in proportion to the square footage of the building, that the parking that it's surrounded by is actually quite minimal. The Commerce Building, I mean, it has a parking lot across the street, which nobody recognizes even exists for the most part, and is always empty because that parallels the 7-Eleven entranceway.
And just if I could ask Joe Rena a few questions. Joe, in reference to the compliance of the sidewalk, ADA and otherwise, that's not going to prohibit anybody from walking up and down the street or
Not at all.
standing on a corner watching a parade or anything like that?
Not at all. It's going to be the same as anything else you'll find the opposite corner and whatnot.
And Joe, in reference to the rendering or the model, I don't know how that's done. I don't think anybody up here, maybe except for the architect there, really knows how that's done. Is that to scale? Is that
absolutely.
accurate?
It's done from the plans.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
the plans and elevations are entered in the computer, and a software program takes that information and generates what you see. So not only is it to scale, it's exactly to scale.
Yeah.
So what, if this was able to play out and you could drive down the street, what we're seeing there is an accurate representation
Correct.
of what's going to be built?
Yes.
Okay.
I just got a quick question. With regard to the corner of Veterans. With regard to the corner on Veterans, where everybody has identified that that's where it's the narrowest, right? And then it kind of, what would be involved in making, I mean, how much would you need to widen that mouth right there? And what would be involved with something like that? Is it
yeah,
just
I
not
don't-
possible? Because I remember the initial plans called for something like that. Am I right about that? or-
No, the initial plans call for taking from that lane, as we mentioned before, coming in, leaving it with the width that it is, and as you proceed into Veterans Road, bringing the lane down. But we never looked to change the actual mouth of the
Intersection.
street. Yeah.
The actual
Yeah.
corner.
Right.
Okay.
I have one question. Some of the patio seems to extend beyond the border of the property into town right away. Is that
Right.
correct?
Correct.
So what's the consequence and how do you handle that?
There would need to be a lease agreement between the property owner and the town.
Is that you have to deal with the town board on that then?
Actually, probably not. I mean, it's basically everybody's property. Every piece of property probably in the town encroaches upon the unimproved portions of the rights of way. That's probably a 50-foot right of way, and so you have a lot of unimproved sections that is already occupied for private use. So, but to be on the safe side, I mean, if that's what it's necessary, you have it at Trailside Cafe. You have it a lot of different places in town.
I'm just wondering because I just saw it.
It would be a license, basically.
Right, it's a license agreement, right?
And
The town does that.
yeah, to the degree that you actually create physical structure on it, you would need it. And then, so that's not. Then somebody, actually, I think Susan asked about liability. Bottom line, you're responsible for your own property, and it doesn't make any difference whether the person's on there legally, illegally, as a guest, or anything else. If you keep your property in disorder or neglect and it causes injury, you're responsible. But that goes for everybody anywhere. That doesn't, the hotel doesn't act as an insurer for the entire community for somebody that may park and then walk there.
I had a question about parking. Someone I don't know who it was, but made a comment about possibly reserving or restricting parking in the community center. I don't know, we certainly don't have the ability to grant a restricted parking space to someone else that runs a private business, nor does the applicant, I think, ask for that. So I don't know how that would come about if anybody was thinking about doing it, which certainly don't support, but.
I wouldn't support it either.
So
It's not even in this application for that.
Oh, I know, but the comment was made, so I don't think anybody would think that could happen in the future, because we don't have the ability to make that.
True.
No, it's to your point, it's really a non-issue. If you were to do that, any of your major public events in town would be completely restricted. Because everybody, you'd have a parking lot monitor for everybody. You have to, I mean, there's no enforcement, avenue for that. If you want no parking signs in front of the building, we can, obviously accommodate that. But again, you have a sea of asphalt in this town that is seldom occupied. So I think at one meeting we prefaced it with saying that, I think the reaction for this board has been fantastic for this project. And I say that because it's quite a bold project for the town. It really is. But it's something that if we're going to move the town forward, if we're going to create the kind of downtown that we really have been looking for and planning for, you have to understand that this is a substantial investment by a private individual. And the thing is that if you're not going to start to promote these types of activities, you're not going to get them. You're just not. So the town it suffers in the long run. This is a major investment, and it's always remarkable how everybody wishes to control and operate somebody else's business. You can't get into the operational aspects of the business. Trust that the person that's going to run it is a professional, is a hoteler. He will know what to do. He'll know how, if they want to use a bathroom, he'll handle all those things. So, I think those are all non-issues for at least for your purposes anyway.
Thank you. Please, it's a public hearing.
Dan Strauss, to say that some of these issues are non-issues, I don't think is reasonable, because this is the first hotel that you've had in Yorktown, and it only has 17 parking spaces. And to also make the comment that it's only going to be used at night, if the people are using the hotel, that means that their cars are going to be parked there.
Not to correct you,
Okay,
but I think
and
there are
also-
two hotels, or there was, I think, the town line.
Well, I'm not nitpicking. I'm talking downtown. That's what you're talking about,
That's correct,
downtown,
yeah.
right? I'm not talking about out in another part of Yorktown. We're talking downtown. And Mr. Grace is making the comment that this is great for the town, that it's the way the town should be and everything like that into the future. But I'm making the comment that you don't know what's going to happen, because this has not happened before, and you only have 17 assigned parking spots. And I'm not beating a dead horse. They could be filled completely by people who are in the hotel, and then people come to the bar, and they may come to the cafe during the day, as has been commented. So they may go over to overlapping parking spaces, and we do not know what is going to be the ramification of that happening. And I'm just making that point to you. Thank you.
Mr. Pond, if I may.
Please, Jay.
Jacobson, my comment about reserving spots is based on my experience and my observations in communities surrounding Yorktown, a little bit toward the South County and in New York City. You get valet companies that cone off public spots. It happens regularly. That's what I'm looking to prevent. And I understand Mr. Grace talking about the operation of the business. Fully understand that. I also understand that if we don't specifically prohibit something, then it may happen. If Mr. Grace is correct and the hotel operator would never do it, there's no harm by putting the prohibition in. If, on the other hand, they hire a valet company that chooses to do it, then Yorktown has the ability to enforce violation of a stipulation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I could address that if you did. All right. I mean, the valet parking can be taken care of very easily.
That's all right. Anybody else from the board? Comments, questions, concerns?
I just want to note they are asking for a 9-space variance, right? 9-space variance on parking?
Yes.
Have a
Which is
couple
not
things.
Please.
significant.
Anything else, Aaron?
Yeah, I'm good. Go ahead.
With respect to the height, in the overlay district, there's hard limits on the height. I think they're close, but they got to get within another 6 inches or so, which I think that they can do, but it's a hard limit as opposed to setbacks and other things that you can vary, which also has its limitations as well. So. We still have to get through a lighting plan and some of the lighting decisions, right, which are pending.
The exterior?
Yeah, correct. So we have a lighting plan generated, but I met with John and Robin on Friday because there was a question on the street lamps that the fixture, the lighting of the fixtures, the high pressure sodium fixtures that are on Commerce Street are no longer available, so they would be LED. So it would be a different type of light. So we're working with the lighting consultant to see if he can get a softer light to tone it down. It's never going to match or be the same, but maybe soften the light a little bit. But the rest of the site lighting is all set. It's just those 3 street lights that are going to be out in front of on the Veterans Road side.
And if we've learned anything over the past few years about lighting, it's a very, very sensitive topic.
Yeah.
And you don't want to go down that street and have it be completely,
Correct. So that's why I brought that up because we knew that was going to be a concern on how to get the lighting soft enough to match the Commerce Street site.
Okay.
But otherwise, the rest of the site lighting is appropriate at this point.
With respect to the width of the road and the intersection, the discussion was always about the portion of the road as it opens up as you go by this site north on Veterans. There was never a consideration of, in any way, reducing the width at the neck of the intersection. It would be an impossible situation. It is also a difficult situation. I think it's an interesting idea that was brought up by Sergio about widening that a little bit. So in our discussions that I'll have with the highway super tomorrow, and maybe with you, Joe, we'll talk. We'll look at that and see what those turning radiuses are, if they can be improved by just a little bit, because even a little bit may help quite a bit there. And also the consideration was, as you go by closer to the entrance, there's the road section there is over 40 feet wide, so there is room to make that tighter, and it gives a little bit better control and maybe helps the site operate a little bit. But that was the only considerations. It was never to reduce the neck of the intersection whatsoever, because we all understand that it's a difficult turning movement. That brings up one last thing that I wanted to discuss was the location of the trees and the lights in close to the intersection. So I want to talk about as the new trees get closer to the curb line, whether indeed or in fact that they will have some difficulty with traffic and being brushed by traffic, because they are closer. The trees that are there now are set back, as you recall. So we can talk about it afterwards.
That's an easy thing to deal with. We can move. That's not a set. We just tried to make them symmetrical.
Yeah, no, understood.
and come off the corner the same way you came off the corner onto Commerce Street.
Yeah,
So-
we on the lighting poles, we do lose the hanging poles, for
Right.
the pots. I don't know if we'll have those here or not. We haven't gotten to that detail, but so I think with that intersection being as narrow as it is, we should just take a hard look at that.
Okay.
So,
How you doing?
My name is Lenny Purcell, and I've been living in Yorktown for 34 years, and I think this is a great project. I just want to make sure certain things were done. Secret reviews are done.
So, do you want to talk about that, John?
We're in the midst of this. This is the secret review.
Uh-huh.
It goes parallel to the site plan review under the regular town law, so you're in the midst of it right now.
What about SWIP reports?
What reports?
SWIP.
Same thing.
Same thing, okay. Because I heard you're going to be adding some blacktop, so, stormwater prevention. Just making sure that review is being done.
That's looked at, and the requirement in the code is that there's no additional runoff increase over what is there now to what the proposed construction will be. So they have to maintain the runoff that's there today. So I think the plan right now is underground retention and detention.
Okay. So down the street, you were talking about the trees. Down the street by the gas station, you have Zelkovas that are right up along the street. And those turn into large trees. And they've been doing fine. If you just continue that, everything would look symmetrical going down the road instead of having all this different stuff going on.
Okay, good point.
Just a suggestion.
Yep.
Very good point.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Joe, do you just want to once again talk about the city requirement?
So, as I said, this is in a New York City DEP Main Street designated area, so we need to comply with their regulations for the stormwater control. We have to get a stormwater permit from the DEP as well as from the town.
Right.
From the planning board. They're going to.
So there's another agency that specifically
Right.
looks at the stormwater.
Correct. So we've already prepared the SWIP, and we already have the design. Of course, we've done testing with the DEP out there already, so we know our design parameters. But of course, we can't make a formal application to them until the planning board has acted, and we have a negative declaration. So once we have that in place, we're ready to submit to them. We have everything together.
Okay. Right. Anything else from the board?
I got a question, Joe. You mentioned something about underground parking.
Not underground, but it's under the building, yeah, under that.
Oh, under the building. No,
Yeah,
you're
under
not-
that.
You're not going to.
No, not underground. I tried to catch myself after I said that.
Tested bore and it.
Yeah, no, I
might
tried
hit
to
rock
catch
and you don't
myself
want
after
to do
I
the
said
job.
that. Yeah.
Counselor?
Nothing else.
John?
Nothing further.
Again, anybody from the public? All right, then, do I have a motion to close the?
One in the back.
Oh, was there someone? I'm sorry, I apologize. Didn't see it back there. Meant no disrespect.
My experience has been that when a developer comes into an area and refers to the very legitimate concerns of the residents in what I would deem to be a condescending and demeaning manner, I believe the use of the term was tidbits. Well, they're not tidbits to the people upon whom this project will have a major impact upon. And since it is I call it a giant step forward, and some might view it as such for the area, well, then these tidbits there, such as security and such as lighting and such as the type of clientele you're seeking to attract, they're not tidbits. They say that the devil is in the details. Well, maybe those tidbits are details, but the bottom line is this. Those details can have a major impact upon the success or the failure of a project. Obviously, we want this to be a win-win. Win-win doesn't happen when one person is saying, these are our concerns, and the other person is saying, they're just tidbits. We don't have to really pay attention to them. So I think that is something I feel that needed to be said, and thank you for permitting me to say it. Thank you very much.
No problem.
State your name, please.
Yes, my name is Gerard A. Longarzo. People call me Jerry Longarzo.
If I may,
Hang on. So we've had, and we take every comment seriously. I remember the Taco Bells that came in. There was a parent who came in and they were concerned because they had saw online that it becomes, basically after bars, young people will go there and go after the food. We took that seriously. We did look into it. So we look in. I know people don't necessarily believe everything we say because we're part of the government. I get that. But we do take every comment seriously. We give everybody every opportunity to speak their mind, ask their questions, and those things are looked at. We might not come out right away and say everything, but everything that comes to us are looked at. And the drunken taco thing, that we looked at. So we do look into these things seriously. I don't need these.
Yeah, I just want, I don't know whether I said something that was untoward. I certainly didn't mean it. All I'm suggesting is that, and to your point exactly, we hope for the best. The problem is that you can't get too steeped into the operational aspects of any business to control it, because it's just, government has a certain limitation. It can't necessarily go there. So we can't restrict the patron, who the patron is, that type of thing.
I do understand that, but working for a different government agency during the day, I see what the police do and building departments do every day to kind of take care of those issues. And I think in Yorktown, we are blessed to have a fantastic police department that are on our blocks every day, keeping us safe. So I'm quite certain that from the reputation of the person building this building, who has other businesses in town, that your concerns will be addressed. And I do believe that.
Just one last comment. I've been in certain roles in government in the past, and I've always thought that the way you control behaviors through the area and bulk of requirements that you have, and also design. If you really get a very well designed and aesthetically pleasing building, it's only going to be patronized by likewise.
And I think the gentleman said it very well when he said everybody wants us to be a win-win.
Yeah, I think this will be. No.
So that's
but
what
I just want to. If I said anything, I don't believe I did, but if I said anything untoward, I apologize.
All right, we good?
Just one more question.
Oh, come on up.
It's a quick one, but might save you some money if it wasn't done. So the demolition of the existing building, have you had lead, asbestos, PCB surveys done?
I know they have to go through that before they get any demos.
Right.
That's on the applicant. We haven't
Surveys,
heard.
you don't know if they did?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Okay.
Motion to close?
Is there a second?
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
We'll leave it open for a 10-day written comment. Is that all right? Thank you very much, all. You eating the jelly beans?
Yeah, I was eating some of yours. They're not mine. Oh, yeah, sugar. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Okay, next, we have another, this one's a public informational hearing, location 670 East Main Street. Do I have a motion to open the public informational hearing?
Motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
How are you?
Hello. Good evening.
What's up, guys?
Will Angelillo from Han Engineering, talking tonight about 670 East Main Street. Robin, I think, is going to pull up the site plan for us. It's the same plans that you folks saw last time we were here. For the public, we are proposing 4 two-story, 3-bedroom townhouses with 12 parking spaces on a lot that's sandwiched between East Main Street and Old Jefferson Valley Road.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Tom.
Great, thank you, Robin. The site is currently a single-family house with a detached garage that's not in the best of condition. The house currently doesn't meet setback requirements. We're proposing to remove that house, construct the 4 townhouses with the 12-space parking lot, a dumpster to collect garbage. We're also proposing to extend the sidewalk down East Main Street, connecting it to the east of the existing sidewalk. We are working to preserve a large maple tree that's there on the near the proposed entrance. What else? We're proposing to screen the property with evergreens along the backside, and continuing the tree line along the frontage along East Main Street, with screening of also of the dumpster area there. The property requires setback variances. The building envelope is very small. You essentially couldn't build anything on the property without setback variances. So I think, as we discussed last month, we are going to submit an application to the ZBA. I think it's the deadline's towards the end of this month. And we'll proceed with them to hopefully receive those variances, and we can proceed with this project. With that, I think that kind of summarizes this project.
Okay, thank you. So this is a public informational hearing. This is kind of a first flush so that the residents are aware of the project. As was stated, this is the first step. This project does require variances through a different board, the Zoning Board of Appeals. And then if that is granted, there would be separate public hearings here as a second step past the variance. So this is a public informational hearing. So anybody from the public, and I see there's probably public here who are interested in this, please just come up, state your name, and ask your question. Anyone? You guys got anything? No? You are all here for this, right? Anything from the board?
None.
We've seen it.
Wrap it up.
We have, and this has been downsized from the original
Yeah.
application. And procedurally, the next step would be the ZBA.
Next step is your referral to the ZBA with your recommendation.
Okay. All right, so again, this is a public informational. Anybody from the public got any comment? Okay. Anything from the board?
I think it fits in with the neighboring very well.
And if
I mean, when you look at the
well,
adjacent
yeah,
properties,
you
it's
said-
perfect.
Yep.
There's nothing, it just fits right in there, I think.
Aaron?
Did a good job on it, he's knocking it down.
Motion to close the public informational hearing.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Thanks.
Should we take a vote
Vote?
on a referral?
Yep. So the next step is the ZBA. What is the wish of the board? Want to send a positive referral?
Positive, yeah.
Yes.
Do we have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Take care. Have a good night. So I now have a motion to close the regular portion of the meeting and move into the work session.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
First on the agenda, we have IBM Battery Energy Storage. This is a discussion of a site plan and special use permit. Location is 1001 Kitchewan Road.
Good evening. My name is Rudy Albrecht. I am the construction supervisor for PowerFlex, who are building the solar project over at the Watson campus. I'm here to answer any questions. IBM has been in touch with the neighbor next door. She had raised some questions concerning noise and visual distractions for her. IBM has been in touch with her, as I have, also to help mitigate some of the problems and concerns she had. And we're on the road to recovery. We will be putting up a fence. IBM has agreed to everything, anything she wants. We will remove any eyesores, any dilapidated or broken stuff that's around. Landscaping, new trees, anything they want, IBM will bend into a pretzel to assuage any concerns that the neighbor has and what you guys might have as a concern.
So if I remember, if I recall, there were two different parts of the fence. There was a piece that was broken. It's going the entire length, right?
Yeah, they're going to go the whole way.
Brand new.
Brand new. They're going to landscape it. They're going to remove a lot of the stuff that has accumulated over the years. And the neighbor, Ms. Bolger, she's quite pleased with the reaction she's gotten from IBM. I'm speaking on behalf of PowerFlex, but I also bring a note, too, from IBM that the lady in charge of facilities and management, said anything they want, we're here to help them, and we will be a good neighbor.
Oh, it's much appreciated because I remember when she came and expressed her concerns.
Yeah.
This board appreciated the manner in which she addressed her concerns.
She's a nice lady. I, too, went over. I was sort of responsible for answering a question she might have had concerning lighting. And I understand what she's saying. She can't go outside and see the sky because of the ambient lighting around. We did manage to bring it down, take away some of the lights that were very obnoxious, and she was pleased. Anything she wanted, she really presented herself in a nice way, and we responded in the same way. I, myself, and PowerFlex, and IBM.
Well, IBM's always been a very good neighbor to the town.
Absolutely.
So, John, what's the next step here?
So everything will be done. We're going to be putting in some structure for a battery, which is not yet decided whether or not it's going to be going in. But if it is, all the necessary questions you might have concerning it will be answered, and renderings will be given, and we'll address it appropriately, I guess.
We had the
They are
information.
hoping to get a public hearing, which I think that they're probably at the point where you can hold that, so.
Public hearing, do we do that?
We did
I think I was here as a requirement to satisfy that in order to get a public hearing.
All right, so we could set that?
So just a quick question. You said the project may not proceed, the battery
Well,
storage?
no. The battery, yes, may or may not. It's the money issue too, whether or not. But it's known that if solar, you need the battery in order to hold. Otherwise, you lose it. So,
But regardless of that, the neighbors' concerns will be addressed and the work that you're talking about will be done.
absolutely, everything.
Good news.
IBM is just it's quite an entity. And OSHA, the Occupational Safety Hazard Administration, spent the week there last week. And they set the bar. They're the golden child of safety and doing things correctly.
That's a good thing. I'm
So,
sure you guys passed.
it's a pleasure working for them.
All right, so we'll set a public hearing? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Yellow jacket that did it.
The yellow jacket? I toned it down tonight.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care. Next on the agenda, we have the Staples Plaza Battery Energy Storage System Expansion. This is a discussion of a special use permit. Location is Compound Road. How are you?
Good evening, the members of the board. Good evening, the public. Mazia Deleli from IPP Solar. Perhaps I can just give you a quick intro about us, and then we can discuss the project. So I'm one of the founders of IPP Solar. We've been in business for 15 years now. We are a solar company based in New York City. We do only commercial and industrial projects. And past few years, we've been doing energy storage as well. We actually completed the first commercial energy storage project coupled with community solar in the state of New York at the same location, which got us a nice ribbon cutting event with then Lieutenant Governor Hochul and a number of other officials. So we are here to discuss a phase 2 of that same project. And I provided drawings and a cover letter. Please let me know how you wish me to proceed at this point.
Any comments?
No comments.
This is right next to the existing
Correct.
battery pack, and I would assume that the same conditions and requirements that apply to
Absolutely.
the first one would apply to the
Absolutely.
addition. So to
We have the same safety measures, which are essentially already in place, such as, you know, the yellow lines for the, you know, fire trucks, the sensors, the cameras, the all kinds of, yes.
I mean, the only issue I see that, I know, the first set of battery packs are set back from the trafficked area, and they're really at the edge of the parking, and this one is right up nearby, so just, whatever safety measures need to be put there to make sure that we don't have any problems, need to be done.
I mean, if you
Couldn't
could
you
zoom,
put it on the other side?
No, if you zoom, if we can zoom in, I will show you. Okay, so the first is the phase one is on the bottom.
Yeah.
And the phase two is on the top, right? So we keep the fence all around it, and we just removing, I think, 2 or 3 parking spots. So that's sort of a dead end, and there is no traffic there. So I don't know if that is what you were referring
Well,
to.
can't you switch it?
Can't you put it below the?
Put it to the inside of the original
away from
one,
the curb.
instead of out toward the traffic.
Next to the existing unit?
Flip, put it on the other side.
Move it south.
No, because that's on the south side, it's a grass area. And it's a whole can of worms because you have the New York City watershed. I don't know if we can get, and it may get closer to the property line with neighbors. I mean, it's a whole other,
I was
a
just
lot of other
thinking-
issues that originally we want,
Are there parking spaces where it says unit typical of 2? Are there parking spaces within that red outline?
Yes.
And those parking spaces are going to disappear?
Correct.
In favor of the new units going in?
Correct.
Whereas the other area is grass area?
No,
Where
there has.
Aaron was proposing?
Yes, if you are referring to the area
Right there.
exactly there, it's a grass area.
Right.
I just
No, I
thought of
don't
it.
disagree. We wouldn't lose parking spaces, and it would be further away from the traffic.
That's
So-
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I think we had contemplated that in the phase one, and for a number of reasons, it was dropped. I don't remember exactly, but I think some of the reasons were it was getting too close to the property line, the neighbors, and also you are creating a pervious surface. So, it's just a number of other issues that at the time I think led us to put the installation where it is right now.
I think the biggest one was the neighboring residential properties.
Yes.
If I remember correctly. There's been a lot that has transpired on this site over the years. And I know the neighbors directly adjacent to this were concerned. I do know they're also concerned about the landscaping and the maintenance
Yes.
of it. I haven't had a chance to go back there recently, but I think that's something we should look at too, to make sure that they're.
I mean, I have some pictures if you like, but you are right. You have some tall trees, you have some nice landscaping, and if we were to bring it that close, it may have an
I
impact.
think it was also, there was a fear of fire.
Correct.
And this type of, that was very new back then.
Correct.
I think this was one of the first in the state.
The first in the state.
So, it was obviously new technology. I am going to take a ride out there just to verify. what I
Absolutely.
remember in the beginning.
Absolutely. As you wish.
Because, even when the charging stations went in, and there was a concern about it. Do you have any concern about the parking?
In short, no. We've looked at this site over this last decade a number of times.
Yeah.
And have really proved out the parking time and again.
Yeah.
There is still conservation spaces that have yet to be built, and we still yet to have witnessed, parking deficiencies of a magnitude that would bring that into play. So I don't really see any difficulty with that at present.
So what's the next step on this one?
I would say that I would do individual site visits at least to get a sense of the different areas that you guys had talked about, and I would schedule a public informational hearing.
Everybody ready
We
with
could
that?
do that.
All right, so we'll schedule public informational, and then we'll individually go out and take a look. Because this site is really, there's been so much going on there.
Okay.
Sound like a plan?
We'll move forward.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Take care. All right, next on the agenda, we have a town board referral. This is the AMS Yorktown Development. Location is 800 East Main Street in Jefferson Valley.
Good evening,
How are
Mr.
you?
Chairman, members of the board. Mark Weingarten from Dilbello, Dinellen, Weingarten, Wise, and Wiedeker on behalf of AMS Acquisitions for the property at 800 East Main Street. We conducted there was a scoping session in front of the town board, who's lead agency, with respect to the positive declaration that was issued by them for the environmental impact statement. Happy to talk to you about the project. We were told there was no requirement of a presentation this evening. It's been referred to you for a discussion of the draft scope that's in front of you, and we can answer any questions and also provide whatever information you'd like. I'm joined by Peter Farrow, our planner from AKRF, and whatever your pleasure is, we're happy to try and accommodate.
And then we want to approach it. Any thoughts?
My thoughts are embodied in the document already.
Yep.
So, along with many others, so I don't have
Yep.
anything further to say. I just will say that I'm sure you're aware of the project, but certainly one of the things that we've been focusing on is, given its prominence on the top of a ridge, how it visually affects the Taconic Parkway and other parts of the immediate area.
The scoping document talks about alternatives. Does it talk about alternative access points to the site other than the one that's proposed currently? Is that a requirement for them to consider?
We, in terms of the requirements for alternatives under the regulations for EISs, no, but we have talked about looking at alternative access and how to best, get in and out of that site, given what's there and how it operates, which it doesn't function in the best manner. So that is definitely being talked about, and there will be, I believe, a hard look at the traffic design, not in terms of just what you see in terms of how the ingress is now, but other opportunities for that.
It was raised at the scoping session at the town board, and we would anticipate that that is one of the changes that would be made when the scope is finalized, that we would at least be asked, we were asked at the hearing by members of the public, and we would expect that the town board will require us to look at alternative access points.
Well, I think we should send, that's a concern that I have, and if you share it, if the board shares it here, then we should send that back as a recommendation as well from us.
No objection.
I agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
In reference to the view shed from the Taconic, we dealt with this too on Costco. And we asked for certain things from Breslin at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something we would forward off to the town board, or?
No, to the town board. You will get this as a site plan at some point.
Yeah.
And you can relook at some of that stuff that hasn't been fully looked at in the EIS. If in fact that happens, I don't know that it will, but certainly you can mention that in your memo to the town board, which is probably the best time to do it is now.
Okay.
And
so
we should.
we should start really coming up with any concerns. All right, so we'll start working on a draft memo.
Yeah.
Anything to add at this time? So we'll start working on that.
No, and the draft scope has a section for
Yep.
visual impact. In fact, for your information, even before we submitted our petition in working with the planning staff and the administration, we did early on visual impact studies of a number of places that we were asked to do because it was one of the major issues clearly with traffic that we were asked to look into. So we've actually already done some of that work, and we expect that we'll be asked from very specifically where the view sheds will come from, how high the trees are, whether we're exceeding the trees or not. We believe we've designed something, even with the increase of height, that will be below the tree canopy, and we'll have to show that and indicate that in the specs. So that is something that we are anticipating will be fully a part of the environmental impact statement we'll be submitting for the DEIS.
All right, so we'll work on.
I have one question. In some of the drawing, the maps of the area, it talks about a half-a-mile study area radius, which leaves out certain intersections along East Main Street and things like that. What's the implication of a study area that's delineated?
You have your own traffic consultant that's hired by the town. That is while we made suggestions as to what we thought ought to be the traffic study, that is the response of your traffic people. That's part of that draft scope, so that you might ask your own professionals as to why it was created in that way.
So you didn't come up with that?
Well, the way it works is we put together a draft scope, so our professionals put together a draft scope, and then your professionals review it and say, no, it needs to be more. And that's what happened here. And so for that specific study area and why it was done that way, I would recommend that you talk to your own professionals. It's their recommendation.
Is there any particular intersections you're thinking of?
Well, going east, there isn't much that's covered there in terms of major intersections. It goes to Hill Boulevard or Lee Boulevard, but doesn't go out to Hill. That's all. And considering other things that are going on, I think that we ought to make sure that those areas are studied, the impacts of everything that comes down, things coming down. Wood Street, a tremendous amount of traffic comes down there every day.
Can we just, one point of information from Mr. Farrow, our planner?
So this half-mile study area, this circle, refers only to the land use study area, looking at the land uses surrounding. Right. What is pulled up here are the intersections proposed to be analyzed in the traffic study, and it does go. I think it goes all the way to Hill, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So two different.
That's what I was at. I wasn't
I'm
sure
sorry,
what it meant initially.
Two different maps. Two different study areas for different purposes.
So that's just a land use.
Just strictly looking at, land uses.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. Okay.
Thanks, man.
That's it.
Okay, so we'll start working on the memo?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We look forward to seeing you, and I love your comment about we'll be back for site plan. That means we're going to get zoning, so that's terrific. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Now we have a small project.
Yeah, a little one. All right, next on the agenda is the Underhill Farm. This is the discussion, proposed traffic improvements. Locations 370 Underhill Avenue.
Oh, good evening, board. Good evening to the staff. Good evening to our elected officials, Jim. Mark Blanchard here from Blanchard and Wilson, attorney for the project. As you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, Phil Gridley's here to do a deep dive into our traffic study. We've heard from your consultant. I think tonight will be a very productive meeting. Before we conclude our presentation this evening, we will be asking for, just as a bit of housekeeping, this being April 10th, we are, the last meeting you agreed to schedule a special meeting for April 12th, so we're back in front of you on Wednesday to discuss other issues. Then we're back in front of you on April 24th, your regularly scheduled meeting. And then that's 3 meetings. We are asking then on April 26th, following the earlier recommendations relating to the additional public hearings or additional meetings with you, we are asking for a special meeting on Wednesday, April 26th. And then we would follow that with a request to schedule the public hearing for Monday, May 1st. That could always be canceled if you didn't feel that we were ready.
Monday?
But we'd like to have the public hearing notice for May 1st, and if necessary, be kept open to May 8th. So that's the schedule we are proposing. For you to think about, I could come back up at the conclusion, we could discuss
Yeah,
that further, but just wanted to put that into the record first, and then we can begin with the informational presentation that we have for you this evening.
Thank you. So I know our consultant is here, and if you would please come on up, we can grab your chair somewhere. There you go. Why don't you come up near the mic? Get right in the game.
Right in the hot seat.
Right in front of Sergio over there.
We can make some room here.
Just so everybody knows who and where you're from.
Sure. Good evening. I'm Scott Levine. I'm with the firm Transfer Group, and you were using my name in vain a moment ago when you were asking about the intersections along East Main Street for the AMS project. So yeah, we've been talking with them about that.
Very good.
Good evening. How's everybody tonight?
Good. Yourself?
Good, thanks. So I think maybe what I'll try to do is just go through, your consultant had several comments. We've responded to both the traffic study and then some of the cost issues. So the traffic study response was March 30th. There are a lot of different topics, that were raised there. Some of it was as simple as providing copies of traffic data that was collected, synchro models, evaluations, responses about trip generation and how we look at the project. So, for example, when we look at the trip generation, we look at what's called the Institute of Transportation Engineers, and we look at peak hours. So our evaluation actually for the residential had looked at what's called the peak hour generator from the original study. There was also information provided on other developments that have been either approved or are planned in the area that would add additional traffic to the area. And then breakdown of the assignment of those trips through the intersections and then where our trips would be added to the intersection. So we've provided some updated information, clarifications on some of the trip estimates. I think in general they're very conservative. We removed any of the what's referred to as interplay trips, which would be trips that would stay on site between the residential and the other commercial uses that wouldn't go out onto the network. So I think that's been addressed in detail. Just a couple things in terms of existing conditions, and I think your consultant will get into it a little bit more, but what we had done when we looked at, without the project, that the delays in the afternoon rush hour on Underhill approaching Route 118 would continue to increase, and we were looking at delays upwards of 80 seconds for that approach. We had identified certain mitigation, which I'll get into what the plan is and what we're looking at doing there.
That's
no build. That's no build.
That's no build without any
improvements, without any modifications,
and
any signal.
no future projects that were identified.
It was just growth,
okay.
Just growth, and the projects that have been approved, such as the Wyant, that traffic. At the time, there was some vacancies in the Caramount building, so that was included. And then with the improvements that we're going to get into, those delays would be reduced to less than 20 seconds. So the queues that occur today on Underhill Avenue in the afternoon rush hour, when you're traveling, towards the center of town, that extend back would be reduced significantly as a result of this. And the real improvement would be widening Underhill Avenue, both on the town hall side and on the site side, to develop a separate left turn lane. So years ago, probably at least 15 years ago, that signal used to be just a two-phase signal. It would just be 118 moving and Underhill moving. When they were doing the work on the Taconic, we convinced the DOT, the town had put out a request to look at modifying the signal, and the signal was modified to put in the left turn at what's called an advance. So that if you're heading eastbound on Underhill Avenue, the advance was added, which helped reduce some of the issues that were occurring at that time. And that was all really triggered when the Taconic work was being done. Everybody was getting off the Taconic and using it as a cut-through bypass. So that has operated over the years, but it's reached its point where it's not, handling those peak volumes. So without the project, without anything being done, those delays and the queues would increase. With the improvements that we're going to talk about tonight, those would be reduced significantly, and that's with the added traffic from our project. And then we did another analysis that looked at all the other things that are on the table, the hotel, the reoccupancy of the old Turco's space. Even though the Roma project is not active right now, we accounted for what was previously proposed at that location. So I think we've done a comprehensive look at traffic. I'll get into the improvements in a minute, but again, the project is more than offsetting, with the traffic that we would be generating. We're talking about an intersection that in the afternoon rush hour has about 1,600 vehicles passing through the intersection. We're adding somewhere in the order of 80 trips. So from a percentage standpoint, even when you account for what's being done, we're about less than 5% of the traffic that would be there without us. The applicant is proposing to do the design and the permitting. That would be part of what would be done to develop these to construction level plans, and also a commitment of, I believe, $450,000 towards the actual construction of the intersection improvements. The improvements are laid out so that in the future, as other development comes in, it would allow improvements along 118 also. The current plan that we refer to as the Phase 1 plan provides left turn lanes on Underhill Avenue approaches to do away with that left turn issue. It reconstructs right now the shoulder on Route 118 southbound, operates as a de facto right turn lane. It really is almost like a free flow in the morning. It's a heavy right turn movement. So that would be reconstructed as a full controlled operational right turn lane. It would be then under a signal control, which would be beneficial from a safety standpoint, would still provide the capacity that's needed there. And that would all be done as part of this intersection work. That shoulder, which has to be reconstructed as a full depth pavement, we assume that the shoulder has to be replaced in its entirety. When we get to that point, typically we'll get core samples because it's functioning as a right turn lane today. And you don't see any real distress there, so it could be a full depth lane already, which would be some cost savings, but we have to assume that it gets reconstructed as full depth pavement. The signal system would be upgraded. Pedestrians would be accommodated with full pedestrian crossings, pedestrian push buttons on all approaches. The slip lane that exists, which is a little complicated for pedestrians today. As you're heading eastbound on Underhill, you have the right turn slip lane, and pedestrians actually have to make two movements across the slip lane, and then they have to cross 118. That would all be brought into a more standard intersection control so that pedestrians would only have to make one crossing. The signal would be updated, basically replaced. We would be positioned to allow for future widening on 118, to provide separate left turn lanes on 118. So those are the, proposed improvements, and the offset would be to deal with that, really the afternoon rush hour, but it would also accommodate a better traffic control of the AM peak hour when you're dealing with that right turn from 118 on to Underhill. We are proposing some striping to do not block the box at Cardinal Court and, of course, at our access point. There are some other signing, sight distance improvements, other improvements along Underhill Avenue that are all outlined in the report. So that's really kind of a quick summary of the traffic items. We did go through in detail the cost estimate.
Phil, can I interject a couple questions before you get onto the cost?
Mm-hmm.
So earlier in descriptions of the project, we were talking about like this 3 options. And the first was, as I recall, roughly in the neighborhood of $150,000, $200,000 worth of, mitigation to
Correct.
the road network, which was put in. You were proposing to mitigate your actual impact out on the network.
Yes.
Okay.
And that incorporated really signal modifications, upgrades to the signal system, new signal detection, some pedestrian enhancements, but did not go to this full intersection plan.
So some of that will be taken up by the larger project.
Correct.
Right.
That's correct.
So my question is, what was in the build situation without any future projects? So your project, what was the impact to the intersection in terms of its, however you want to quantify it, LOS or whatever?
So from a delay standpoint, with those improvements, we were bringing the conditions back to what they were today, a little bit better overall at the intersection.
So the $150,000 was getting you back to the 80-second delay. So you were slipping?
A little bit less than that. We were reducing the delays by 5 seconds or something like that for the whole intersection.
Okay. Thank you.
Look, if I
So-
could just follow up on that.
Mhm.
Is what you're saying that was the impact that they were mitigating in bringing that standard back up again?
Basically, that's how the description of that portion of the project was proposed.
Okay.
That it would satisfy a standard mitigation requirement of not having or mitigating any impact to the intersection produced by the project itself.
Right. Okay.
Correct.
So it was apparently, according to Phil, it was improving it by 1 or 2 seconds or something like that.
Yeah,
The problem is that the intersection is already bad.
Right, exactly.
And, it really would just kind of keep it bad in the same fashion that it is now. It's just not adequate.
Right.
And at the time, we had identified it in pieces. That was, as John indicated, to offset any traffic increases that we would have. We also then looked at this plan to really address the issue of the left turn movements, and to provide some better traffic control and also to further enhance the pedestrians. Then we went one step further, was to just make sure what we were doing there, that when you add in all these other potential developments, the redevelopment of Kmart and so on and so forth, what else could be done, and would we be able to design it that could be added on in the future. So that was kind of a third plan, I'll call it. So it was Plan 1, Plan 2, which is what's proposed now. Plan 2, which encompasses Plan 1, is what's on the table, and everything is set in place for the future plan that would also include turn lanes on Route 118. Not just the right turn lane, separate left turn lane.
So Phil, so just to summarize this particular plan right here in front of us.
Yes.
So we're going to be adding, coming down on the hill from the Taconic. You come off the Taconic, you make a right, you make a left, you're coming down on the hill toward Town Hall. There's going to be a left turn lane
Correct.
at the corner where there is not one now.
That's
and
correct.
a straight lane.
That's
How
correct.
about that little kind of curve that you get onto 118?
That's all going to be combined into a through right lane.
Okay.
Because the benefit of that lane is marginal and it creates more complications with the pedestrians.
Understood. And then on 118, you're going to have a right turn lane that's controlled by a single,
Correct.
where everybody's making that crazy right turn. It's very chaotic
Yes.
as it stands now.
That's correct.
And you're saying that with these improvements, you guys are going to be, aside from the design and permitting, you guys are going to be dedicating an additional $400,000. Is that correct? It was a 450 or 400. What
I
was the number?
believe it's 450,000.
That's what I thought.
Yes.
And what that'll do is that'll bring this intersection from an 80-second delay to a 20-second delay.
Yes. In round numbers, yes.
In round numbers. Thank you.
And that's including some of the other background traffic that would be added there. The other aspect that we got into, and this gets into the cost a little bit more. So when we did our original estimates, we had about $800,000 we had allocated for this plan. That was back in 2022. So with some of the cost increases, we were asked to look at it and see how things have changed. But those were based on DOT numbers back in 22, which were really DOT numbers probably from 2021. We relooked at that. Again, there were certain aspects that were raised about the costs. I think your consultant had higher costs, but again, we had already included our design being done by the applicant. So that wasn't necessary to be included in the cost. In terms of contingencies, when you're doing what's called a scoping level, you would go with maybe a 20% contingencies per DOT requirements. We're at a little bit past just the scope. A scope would be, put turn lanes, put a PED in here. We actually have laid this out to get dimensions, distances, to be able to do calculations on what the cost would be replacing full depth pavement. Once this intersection is widened, you have to overlay the entire intersection. That's a DOT requirement. So you don't just add a lane and then leave it, the whole intersection gets resurfaced, restriped. So all of those parameters we folded into, we provided an updated cost estimate with the 10% contingency and with some inflation factors, and I think now we're at 880 or something like that and again, that includes maintenance and protection of traffic, all the details that go into this. And I think that's pretty much, what we responded to. We can answer any other questions. I think your consultant probably had some other input on it. There were some site plan issues also that we've discussed, and we can work through those, I'm sure.
Robin, I'll bring up. So I teach at SUNY, so I put together some slides to augment the discussion. Super. Thank you very much, Phil, for an excellent introduction. So we've been asked by the planning department to represent the planning board here, to take a hard look at all the analysis that's been done by Mr. Greeley and his colleagues, the applicant's professionals, et cetera. We've had lots of conversations. Next slide, Robin. Lots of conversations over the past few months with the applicant, with DOT, with the planning department, et cetera. The documents that we're drawing on, it's the EAF that was submitted in January. It's a site plan. We were looking at the version dated December. the report that we prepared last month, the memo that Mr. Greeley referenced on the cost estimates, which I'll get to shortly, revisions, et cetera, et cetera. So really I want to focus on three things. One, what Mr. Greeley referred to as the site plan issues, the on-site traffic issues. Second, the off-site traffic issues that we've been talking about so far. And then third is this more specific question of what is it going to take to get 118 and Underhill Avenue done. Next slide, Robin. Okay, so and I'm going to, you've all got the documents, all the exchange between us. I'm going to focus on some of the big picture issues. If there's questions on the details, just we'll chat about it. So some of the big picture issues, you want to try to keep intersections apart from each other. Before we were talking about the AMS project at East Main Street, Route 6, Old Route 6. The basic problem there is you've got two intersections right on top of each other. So you want to avoid that. It's generally good practice. So one of the suggestions that we have here is if you look at the circled, the purple circled area, that internal loop, where that loop comes together, that loop road, is a bit close to the Underhill Avenue intersection. So we're suggesting that somehow think about pulling those two intersections a bit further apart. You'd probably do it by pulling the internal loop road a bit further north. I know you've got the historic building there. There's also some parking spaces there, which in a perfect world, there wouldn't be parking spaces that close to where all those turning maneuvers are happening. So what we've asked the applicant to do is really give some more thought to how traffic comes together at that connection of the loop. And I believe the latest thinking is to have where that kind of big purple arrow is coming in, have that be stop controlled. So what's being proposed here, I believe, is two-way circulation in both directions of that loop. So it's not a one-way loop, it's a two-direction loop. So that's the intersection between the two loop roads there. Second is loading areas. So the site plan that we've been looking at, and I believe it's the most recent iteration, does not have allocated loading areas, and it's busy. There's a lot going on. There's not a lot of places to store a truck. There's going to be deliveries. There's going to be Amazon. There's going to be deliveries to the restaurant, to the businesses. There's going to be, we heard Uber mentioned for the hotel earlier. There's going to be Ubers coming in here. So some kind of loading area we think would make a lot of sense. So we'd encourage you to think about that. Third up there is, again, the two purple arrows. At the moment, the site plan has a sidewalk that cuts across the neck of that loop road, and then it cuts north, crosses the loop road to the north, and then it cuts again to the south to the sort of pedestrian plaza over at Underhill and 118. And those two purple arrows are showing, you'd probably do one or the other, but ways of not having pedestrians have to cross that loop road twice if they're walking east-west from 118 towards the pond area. And number three, really this is just to flag for everyone's attention, the condo building, which is immediately to the north of the little pond there. So what it's showing is 3 rows of parking, but 2 of them in tandem. That means that it's the 2 spaces. One's going to be controlled, or they're both going to be controlled by the same household. And I believe, you can correct me if I'm mistaken, I believe there's 48 spaces under there. So it'd be 32 tandems and then 16 in the single row. So just think about that. I mean, there's issues. It's going to be tight. That's all underground. Well, not underground, but it's under the building. So it's going to be tight under there. It's going to be complex. So basically, give that a hard look how that would work. Again, there's really not a lot of space on that loop road to sort of store vehicles temporarily. It's going to be busy and complex under there. So it doesn't mean you can't do it. It's done in lots of places, but it needs focus. Next slide, Robin. Next is about parking. So we think it might make sense to request a memo from the applicant that basically outlines how parking on site is going to be managed. It's fairly complex. Maybe, Phil, can you update on the senior center parking? I'm not sure the latest thinking on whether there would be senior center parking on this site or on...
Well, there's 2 things. Number one, there are some areas that we have allocated for land bank parking. So if there was a need for additional parking, there's areas that were identified for that. So, for example, if some of those spaces where we're talking about teeing up that internal intersection, if they have to be eliminated or moved, they could go into some of the land banked area. The senior center issue is two things. Number one is that during the day, there's parking spaces for the residential that would be dual use or available. I think there's some additional discussions that have to be held relative to how the parking is going to work if the senior center is built here, how it works. There is not a lot of available parking on the Beaver Ridge property. But I think that whole area around that side where the senior center would go, would have the ability to be, some shared parking, at least during the day.
Is that an adequate connection between the two?
Between this site and Beaver Ridge?
Yeah.
So we have it designed as an all-way controlled intersection. I believe Beaver Ridge had just provided some recent suggestions that they wanted folded in, how it would occur. We haven't really fully digested those. They just came in, I think, last week. But we had it as an all-way stop-controlled intersection. I think that is appropriate. I think this most recent plan may reflect what they're suggesting. But again, that's kind of a fine detail I think we can work out.
So the plan as it stands, as I understand it, is as you're coming north past the sort of the east side of the apartment building, the main road is going to curve around. You'd be kind of turning right to continue north into Beaver Ridge. And based on our discussions, my understanding is that the idea is to provide that connection, but not encourage it to be used for cut-through traffic.
Correct.
It's likely not to be attractive as a cut-through, given its length and what you need to do in order to get through there, I believe.
There's definitely no savings
There's
of
no
time.
savings of time in that. But however, the usage by residents of this project and usage by residents of Beaver Ridge to get either from the north or to the south is an advantage for those residents.
Yes.
Okay, so moving along, we'd like to see a bit more clarity on the shared parking that's on site. So not with the senior center, but between the retail, restaurant, the residential uses. How is that going to be managed? One concern with the tandem parking could be the condo residents might not like it. Why would you want to have your car blocked in if you could avoid that? So how do you keep them from parking in some of the spaces that are reserved for restaurant patrons, et cetera, or are they reserved? And then finally here, there's a suggestion that maybe there might be some of the units in the condo building designated as senior housing. If that's the case, what exactly is being proposed there? If that's true, that reduces some of the parking demand from those uses. But the main thing about the tandem parking is, of those, is it 36 condos in that building? Some of them are going to get 2 parking spaces, some are only going to get 1. So you're going to have units that are allocated 1 parking space, and what happens to those units? Do those people park half a car somewhere else? That kind of a thing. Next slide, Robin. Okay, so moving from site plan issues to the off-site issues. Mr. Greeley mentioned earlier trip generation, so we've had a lot of discussion about how the analysis is being done. Just to give a sort of headline here, roughly half of the site-generated traffic in the PM peak hour, the afternoon peak hour, which is really the critical time period, is going to come from the residences and the other half from the commercial and the restaurant uses. One thing that we've been talking about, the type of restaurant that's envisioned for this site, we think it's being proposed as a fine dining type establishment. That type of establishment is going to have peak hours a little bit later in the evening, not so much during the afternoon rush hour. It's going to be less traffic generated than if it were to be some sort of casual type restaurant. So what we're suggesting is, if in fact that's what is being proposed here is a fine dining establishment that would have those characteristics, establish as a condition of approvals that if that restaurant type were to change, that triggers a reanalysis of what potentially a casual restaurant might generate. Level of service, so this is referring to the delays. Here we're focusing on the one key intersection of 118 and Underhill. So level of service ranges from A, which is uncongested completely, through B and C, which are still relatively uncongested, all the way to E and F, just like in school, is bad. So at present, and we're on the same page, we've both been out there. I was out there on a Thursday afternoon in March. It was roughly 4:30 in the afternoon, and traffic coming from the Taconic was queued back about 500-600 feet towards Rochambeau. Is it Drive or Rochambeau? So what we calculate is that the intersection is roughly a C today. So that 30 seconds is an average of, as Phil was saying, that maybe 80 seconds delay on that approach from Underhill from the Taconic, and much, much less traffic on the other approaches. As an aside, I mentioned to a DOT colleague last week, I'm not sure that the signal timing at present is really the most optimal. So it would be great if they could get a tech to go to have a look at that. Okay, so the build, or the year that we're analyzing, is 2 years from now, 2025. The traffic data itself dates from 2021. So this would be, the intersection would go from a C to a D at 42 seconds of delay, with just the other approved development in the vicinity. So as Dr. Greeley mentioned, it's the Way-In, it's a bit of Caramount, it's the hotel that we heard about earlier. And then with only the sort of detection and communication, the sort of technology type improvements, the intersection would go to an E at 55 seconds of delay. And you're getting into, as you heard, longer delays. But that's if no new turn lanes are added, and we'll talk about that in a moment. That E becomes a worse E at almost 80 seconds if the other not yet approved development were to occur and there were no turn lanes added. So this is the Yorktown Green site. It's the other major ones that are in the area. Next slide, Robin. Okay, so we did a quick analysis based on discussions with the planning department, where they asked us to look at, to take off the table the other development that's planned, under construction, whatever. Take all that off the table and just look at what it would happen with the intersection left alone and with Underhill Farms built as a comparison. So we have that C at 30 seconds today. It becomes a C at 33 seconds with the 4 years of growth from 2021 to 2025. That's just background traffic growth over that period. And it would be a D at 41 seconds with only Underhill Farms and none of the other new developments in place. So we're trying to sort of tease out what is the specific effect of Underhill Farms as opposed to all the other developments that are proposed around. I was delighted to see that in the presentation that Dr. Greeley had earlier, he was showing a do not block the box treatment at Cardinal Court. One thing, just looking at it quickly off the cuff, maybe slide it a little bit to the east. We want to make sure that the few families that live on Cardinal Court are able to have a good line of sight to traffic that's coming westbound on Underhill, maybe coming south and turning. So it's a serious safety issue, so we want to make sure that gets fully taken account of. One thing to be aware of, though, is that do not block the box that we're suggesting for this location is going to eat into a little bit of the new capacity. It's going to make the intersection a little bit less efficient because you're going to have a gap in traffic after the first few vehicles have gone through. But given the competing considerations, we think it makes sense. Next slide. Another issue that we've been talking about, so as it stands now, the proposition is 2 access points, well, 3, including Beaver Ridge. But on Underhill Avenue, 2 access points, one that's mainly for the townhouses towards the west, one that's for the more intense uses on the eastern side, and no access onto Route 118. Dr. Greeley can give a better history lesson than I can on 118, but the long and short of it is that the state DOT has control over access onto 118, and they are unlikely to grant access onto 118. And it's not, they have smart people that work for the state. They can see that it might make sense, but it involves different groups within the Department of Transportation. It's a tricky thing for them to approve because of the way this road was built when it was built.
Just to add one thing, so the DOT has control of access on any state highway, and their general rule of thumb is to access the town road or the local road. But in this case, it's even more complicated than that, because this entire stretch from here up to the Triangle intersection is what's called without access. So there's only locations. When the DOT bought the right-of-way along that stretch of roadway, it's without access. So you have access at Kear Street, you have access at Triangle, of course, at Downing, and you have access at Underhill. Other than that, there is no access permitted. That's why there's no driveway. So, for example, where Cablevision or Yorktown Pizza and Pasta, you look at it and say, well, why shouldn't they have a driveway from that out onto 118? Well, it's because it's without access, and that's a whole different gamut of. It's not just DOT doesn't want the access; you're not permitted to have access.
I mean, my understanding, if DOT wished to, they could give that up. But it's something they hold, and they're unlikely to give it up. Is what it looks like.
It's very complicated because any highway that has without access, if they start granting access permission, it opens up every location to that.
So it's not super optimal from a traffic distribution point of view, because it means to go to the north and east, you've got to kind of loop around, and you're all funneled through Underhill and 118. It is what it is. Next, Robin. Okay, so we've been talking about the three packages of off-site improvements. One is the sort of what I said technology, the improved detection with cameras instead of loops in the roadway. The second is improved communication and basically signal timing improvements. The next one up there is the east-west left turn lanes on Underhill, both coming from the Taconic and sort of from Town Hall. That also adds the right turn lane, which I agree with Dr. Phil. I think we might find that there's enough pavement in that, depth of pavement in that south and right turn lane to not have to replace it all, but we don't know until we know. And the third is the same as that second one, but that also adds north and south left turn lanes onto 118 itself. Next slide, Robin. Okay, so the summary of our view on these three suggestions. Number one, the detection, communication, control improvements. In our view, it's better to get better infrastructure, and that would be better infrastructure. In terms of operational benefits, it's fairly marginal. So it's not the type of thing that's going to give you a real pop. It's not, the public is not going to notice that, wow, this intersection is working a lot better now. Number two, in blue, is where we think that the bang for the buck comes from, and that's from adding those east-west turn lanes on Underhill. And in fact, in our analysis, it's the one from the eastbound one that really is the big winner here. The westbound is not nearly as heavy. So that gives a major improvement. Rather than the ease that we were talking about before, that brings operations back to the C, which is at 23 seconds, even better than today at 30. So it provides not only full improvements to address the applicant's traffic, it also brings operations a little bit better than it is today for the public. And then third, which is that more in-depth reconstruction. Given current traffic patterns, and we also added additional traffic, we did a series of sensitivity analyses, we see relatively minor additional benefits. The level of service goes from a C at 23 to a B at 19, but it's 4 seconds. So that provides much less of an improvement than you would get from the east-west turn lanes. That's a more immediate issue. Next slide, Robin. So in terms of the cost estimate, so the good news here is that Dr. Greeley and us used data in both cases from New York State DOT, but two different databases, unit costs, et cetera. Some were higher in ours, some were higher in theirs, et cetera. It mainly came out in the wash. we come up with a number that is about $1 million to do that sort of blue-colored improvements. The applicant is about 900,880 or in that ballpark. We were at 1.2, 1.3 million, but then we are accounting for the applicant is going to do a bit of earthwork along that south property line, so that's outside of the scope of the cost estimate. I guess that'll be in the revised site plan. The applicant is proposing to do the design of the intersection, which they've got costed as $100,000. So we're actually not far off when you compare apples to apples. In terms of contingency, here I think we're going to dig in our heels a little bit. We think having a higher level of contingency is prudent here. And I understand there's discussions about exactly what is the mechanism, how this gets paid for. But a 10% contingency we think is a little bit risky given what's happening in highway construction costs. Next slide, Robin. So here we have a chart from US DOT. And what I've got highlighted in purple off on the right-hand side is basically an explosion in construction costs post-COVID. So that's about a 40% increase. This is a national index. About a 40% increase in construction costs. And the latest data is now Q3 of 2002, so it takes you up to, September, something like that. So the punchline there is we think it's really important for the town to consider how, if bids come in high, who's holding the bag and to what extent. So how to deal with any unanticipated cost escalation that could come after. Dr. Greeley's used the latest data. We've also used the latest data. We kind of sort of agree on the same range of numbers, but we think the higher contingency makes sense because of what's happening in construction costs. And finally, another point is that at the moment, I believe the language in the EAF and in the traffic study is that the technology improvements are formally a requirement. And then I don't think the word donation is used, but it's not the contribution of the 450K or whatever the dollar number is, isn't described as necessary improvement. And so we think maybe the lawyers have to make sure that you don't end up with approvals granted and something changes and the approval's already granted, but the money doesn't mature. You get the idea. So
I think that's a carryover from the original EAF. I think, some of the discussions and the concerns that has been coming together. So I think,
yeah, we just don't want to see the town in that position.
Absolutely.
Questions, discussion?
Yeah, I got a question. So just to be clear, so according, your number is about $1 million. Okay. And that includes the permitting, the design, the permitting. It includes it includes those numbers as well, or is it on top of the design and permitting that they are proposing in the initial phase, and is it on top of the $450,000 that they're proposing to include? So with the design, with the 450, and the design and permitting that you guys are. Dr. Greeley, that you guys are proposing, which is what? How much was that?
It's over $100,000. I don't have the exact number, but.
All right, so we're looking at hypothetically at least 550, 450 plus the 100. If it's over it, then bonus for us, right? Okay. So they're proposing 550 toward the intersection with the permitting. Your estimate, which seems accurate or seems closer, you've got higher contingencies, and we appreciate that because you never know how this stuff goes, and we understand what you're saying, is about $1 million. So is that on top of the 550, or does that include the 550?
Okay, so it includes the 450 plus the 100 odd K in kind. So yeah, that's why, as I said earlier, we were at roughly 1.2, 1.3 million, and we're down to 1 million because the design is outside, the earthwork that they're going to do with the retaining wall. There's a retaining wall in the south property line that would be moved. So that would be done in kind by the applicant, is my understanding.
Yeah. And there was also, I think you had some, I'll call them construction administration costs that we had, kind of folded in there too. So QA, QC.
Those are a few percent either way.
Yeah.
Another issue for the board and the town ultimately to consider is, again, risk not only of cost overruns, but just management, et cetera. So if the applicant is going to be doing it on the town's behalf, if things don't go as anticipated, how do issues get resolved?
I'm sorry, I forgot your name again.
Scott.
Sorry, Scott. Scott, Gray Rock, the road above. Did you look at that?
Glen Rock.
Glen Rock, sorry, Glen Rock. What about Greenberg?
No, we did not look at that in detail. My understanding is that there's no access proposed onto Glen Rock.
Right.
The westernmost access is for the townhomes. One minor issue relating to Glen Rock is the latest site plan that I've seen doesn't show the sidewalks connecting along Underhill over to Glen Rock, and that's something it's really a town choice if you want that or not.
There were residents from that road that came in that were concerned, young families playing in the street. Do you have any concern of that being a cut through?
Let me get back to you on that. Let me have a look.
Okay.
I wanted to re-explore an issue that I raised at the outset with this project, and that has to do with its connections to the rest of Yorktown. And one of my ideas at that point was to have a sidewalk on the west side of 118, opposite from Caramount. And Dr. Greeley said that we can't do anything there, and then tonight's discussion turned to the vehicular access and driveways and things of that sort. Is the DOT I'm going to ask either of you, is the DOT more amenable to sidewalks along rights of way like this as opposed to driveway cut-throughs and things of that sort? Because what we have is an overlay district that the town board has put together that we're working under to try and create, in my mind, a unified, different kind of a downtown than we have. And so one of the things that I envision when I think about this going forward is more of a neighborhood and less of a highway approach over there on 118. And if the town needs, kind of envision something like this, how does DOT respond when the communities change, that the roads go through?
DOT is its own creature.
So is it a political question more than a technical one?
Let me take a crack. And then
I think there's two. There's the politics of it because of the without access. But the other thing is DOT does not like introduce where there's a potential for people crossing not at the intersections. So that's one concern.
Right.
And there's a couple of things that come into play there. So you have ADA requirements, which at the intersections we can make those connections ADA compliant. Mid-block, unless you're going to totally change the character there, remove the stone wall along 118 and regrade that, I don't see being able to meet those ADA requirements. There also is not a lot of remaining room if you're going to accommodate future traffic movements, because the distance from the edge of pavement to the stone wall does not really permit a full sidewalk in some sections. So that's kind of the real quick brush of.
All right. So if you started from this eastern property line, put the sidewalk, then you need a snow shelf, and then you're starting the shoulder, so you're pushing all of 118 further east. It would make the reconstruction project quite different.
There is a sidewalk on the, I might have my directions wrong, the east side of
On the
118.
other
Correct.
side, yeah.
Correct.
And that was granted how? I mean, was that through DOT?
That was part of the original, yeah.
Okay.
And the one that goes between Kear Street and Downing was more recent, and that had to be approved by DOT, correct?
Yes.
And so could we explore, I love Aaron's idea, taking that pedestrian traffic off the kind of north side of the property to Allen where there is currently a crosswalk signaled.
Yeah.
You can explore that with DOT, I think.
So-
I don't think that question, I'm just talking about no access theory. I don't think that is fully answered in terms of a sidewalk yet, but from DOT. So the question can be asked and put to them.
I mean, there might be a way to avoid DOT. So if you look at the sidewalk that's proposed along Underhill, it's proposed pretty deep into the applicant's property. Maybe there's a way to do that along 118 on the west side as well. Therefore, it's not in DOT right away. It's on their property. They provide the easements, but it's not in DOT's right of way.
So the point is, where do you connect to? So we don't really have full control over Beaver Ridge. There is some sidewalk section in there. So, theoretically, even today, you could walk from the mansion through Beaver Ridge and get out to Allen Avenue without going out into the state right-of-way. But again, we don't control Beaver Ridge in terms of what, other than the connecting point, we do not have that ability to get that done. The town can make that accommodation, but.
So, and I don't mean to cut you off, but Beaver Ridge has come to the applicant for accommodations, from what I understand, on the traffic, right? The town is getting a building put up on that property with parking on yours. I think there's got to be some kind of accommodations or some kind of, when you talk about the political end of things, Sergio, maybe there needs to be a conversation with that. I've said it from day one with this project. If the traffic on your end does not succeed, every project that comes after this is gonna fail because of this. This is the one thing we absolutely can't get wrong. So, with the design itself, the concept, the number 2 concept, taking away the 4-second number 3 concept, the design itself, without the tweaks that we're talking about, in your professional opinion, is that a good design?
Yes.
It is.
Yes.
So it's not a flawed design in any way or approach?
No, what we've seen makes a lot of sense given the traffic patterns today and what would be added in the future.
And that design would not just incorporate what the applicant's showing, but the Wyant and the other developments in town.
Correct.
So the town has put in this overlay district, as you're aware now. This project would help possibly the whole entirety of that area.
Correct. I mean, it won't address what's going on at the triangle intersection. That's its own mess.
Different animal.
But for this intersection, if you just did that number 2 option, the east-west lanes, it provides a lot of extra capacity. So it provides what you need to keep that intersection moving.
And there was a design, as Dr. Greeley was involved, when they were talking about the building on the corner there. That seems to have fallen the wayside. But I think on our end, especially in government, we lack sometimes the funds to do these things. So whatever is done here and however we get to that point, it's got to be done 100%. I said this from the beginning. I don't think we could piecemeal this. Whatever is done has got to work 110% there. It cannot fail because it'll kill everything moving forward.
Not to mention, honestly, it's a tremendous opportunity for the town to correct an intersection, irregardless and irrespective of all the other stuff that's going on. That intersection needs to be repaired just so it can function the way it is now. It's a very hazardous intersection. The streets aren't lined up. You come up past Town Hall, and you try to make a left turn onto 118, and you're in the middle of the abyss. You're in the middle of nowhere, and somebody coming down Underhill trying to make a left onto 118 to go into town. You guys are almost head to head. And I honestly, I don't think that passing an opportunity like this up, which is a huge, tremendous benefit of this project to the town. I don't see that intersection getting fixed anytime soon or anytime in the distant future. So I mean that is a tremendous consideration that we really have to, and our own traffic consultant is attesting to that this is a good plan. So again, the opportunity to fix something, and not only fix it, but make it better, so this way we can expand and we can improve the rest of the town, is an opportunity that's weighs heavily.
Scott, the geography and the topography may not lend itself to this, but does it lend itself to a roundabout?
No, it's a little bit tight, number one, and number two, the approaches are skewed, so it wouldn't be a good treatment here. One point to add about the proposed design, that southbound right turn is kind of a high-speed movement that takes you directly onto Underhill. And again, that's a concern, particularly for those residents of Cardinal Court. The proposed design would actually tighten up the radius of that movement from southbound 118 onto West Underhill, and it would slow it down. So it would slow down that movement a little bit from where it is today, which is a positive.
They roll right through.
I just want to. I have a question in general, and if it was earlier, I might have been able to answer it myself because you've got a lot of information here. The applicant is required to mitigate his impact on the areas that we're talking about. And you've talked about level of service, and you've talked about a contribution, and you talked about the overall cost. I'm still unsure, not that I'm doubting it, I'm just not able to put it all together in my head. Is the applicant's donation, proposed donation, sufficient to mitigate his portion of the impact that he's creating, regardless of whether that brings it to a level C or not? Because we're starting with something that's below where it should be right now. So is he mitigating his impact and perhaps taking us further? Can you give us a little clarification on that? I know that's a lot, but that's really kind of where my head has got to go with this.
I can answer, but maybe not clarify too much.
Okay.
The trouble is that these lanes are lumpy. You get one lane or you get two lanes. You don't get 0.3 of a lane.
Oh, I understand.
So that's the fundamental problem, that indeed, the numbers are something like 5% of traffic at the intersection. Is it a significant impact? It's kind of on the bubble, to use a March Madness analogy. It's kind of close, I think is fair to say. It's not a slam dunk one way or the other. So that's why I'm looking at this from arm's length. I haven't been involved in the discussions about who pays for what. But what I see, it looks like it's kind of a gray area.
Well, I'm not trying to get to who pays for what. I just want to know that he's at least covering his impact, because there's been a lot of comments, public and otherwise, that why is he not paying for everything? And it's not his responsibility to pay for everything, but if he chooses to, he chooses to, and we benefit from that. But I want to know that at a minimum, that the impact is being covered.
Well, again, there's no simple black and white answer here.
Mm-hmm.
Doing this improvement would both mitigate the traffic impacts of this applicant, and it would provide a series of public benefits. Mm-hmm. And it's really a judgment call of how to make that happen.
Is that information, is there more information yet to come that will clarify my question?
I'm not expecting very much. I mean, I'm going to look into this question of Glen Rock and possible cut-through traffic there, but there's no equation that says his number should be 450 or it should be 612.
I understand. I'm clear that there is no.
Could I add one thing? So, I think where we started was just exactly your point. What our initial plan in terms of technology and upgrading that would offset our increase in traffic to bring it back to where it was today. However, there are other issues here that we were looking at in terms of safety and providing the turning lanes. So the initial, I'll say, dollar allocation to offset the traffic, we were 100 and change. I forget the exact number, $120,000 or that was including some of the work on the hill itself, on the crosswalk there. So that was to offset any increased traffic from the project, so not make it any worse than it is today. When we had to do the look at other development traffic and what else is there, and to look at the operational aspects, that's how we got to the turn lane plan that we're talking about. The applicant has increased his contribution to $450,000 plus the design and permitting, which is, we have it, it's a little bit over 100,000. I forget the exact number. So to me, that more than offsets the traffic generation, but it's here to make a better, safer intersection, and that's why, you know, that's the proposal that's out there today.
No, I heard you, and I
Yes.
hear what you're saying, and I'm not, I wanted to.
Oh,
I
I'm
wanted
sorry.
to hear it out of his mouth as
Understood.
well, because he's the guy working for us.
Understood.
At this point. So, not that I'm doubting you, I just
Yes.
want to know if he concurs or does not.
Understood.
Well, one area where I don't yet concur, I'm not convinced that the technology improvements by themselves would be full mitigation.
And I got to tell you, I've seen it before. We've talked about this from day one. You throw some tech at that intersection, that is a bad intersection. And you have a development that everybody keeps talking about, the density and other things. I don't think that's going to help. I think what the applicant has done is come with a plan that you said works, right? It improves the situation. It makes it better for the entirety of the town. I've been getting off on that exit daily to see what it's like. It's a bad intersection right now. And Sergio, unless you got a few million in the budget that you're going to be throwing to fix that, we need to come up with some kind of way to make this work. I don't know. I think it's got to be, there's a lot of questions here. There's a lot of things that have to be looked at. I think there's further work to be done. But just as one member of the board, I think I've been clear that the traffic thing, the whole situation there is the game changer.
Yeah, I think the game plan, Mr. Chairman, is to get that improvement. The improvement here is to get that done.
Oh, and I think we're
That's
hearing
the
that
plan.
from all
That's-
sides.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got two
And-
engineers that deal with traffic. You're a doctor in a traffic engineer. So I think between the two, it sounds like it's a good plan. And someone said earlier, and we say it all the time here, devil's in the details. This is something we cannot get wrong.
And one of the other things that's significant here, because I've done this in many municipalities, different locations, by the applicant doing the design, make sure that it stays on track and drives DOT. To not have the design puts it at a much slower pace, and it's all under control then in terms of the land and any of the other controls. So
Yeah,
I
I
think that's
don't-
an added benefit to get it done.
I don't know if you know of any DOT projects and redesign that are in the books, but I know right now, everything I've heard is that if you want to put up the design and you want to pay for it, they'll certainly look at it and speed it through for you. But for you to go to them and say, we need this fixed, it's just
It's
not.
not gonna
happening with
So one point here about the general context, the funding context. There's tons of money floating around for transportation infrastructure now, but it's not these kinds of improvements. A lot of the money that comes out of the infrastructure bill, which was late 2021, is competitive funding, and it's designed to address environmental goals or environmental justice goals or climate change goals, et cetera. So this type of project, it would be really difficult to get funded, even though there is a ton of money floating around for transportation.
Now, I've heard that if your goal is economic development, there might be funding for that.
That's correct. That's
So
right.
I think that's what this is in a lot of respect. I don't know if we have people in town that write grants, I'm sure.
We do.
You know, I know Robin and John have gotten quite a few with buses and other things that the town's gotten. But if that's a way to start to look at this. But again, with this project, this is something we, absolutely cannot get wrong. So I think we have to regroup and relook at this. I don't think there's any decisions going to be made tonight on this. I don't know if anybody's got any other questions or.
Well, from what I see, the applicant is going to do an improvement here.
Well,
So
the town's got they're funding part of it.
So there's a big chunk of change past that.
So if the town don't fund their share, it's over? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, am I mistaken?
I don't think,
That's impossible.
I don't think we're at that point yet. You're still, evaluating it. Tonight was a re-examination of the things that we've heard before with our professional fellow in tow. So
What I see
it's certainly
on
not time
this
for a
is-
decision.
What
on
I
it.
see is an improvement. Regardless of how it gets funded, we need the improvement. Everybody knows it.
There's no question about it.
And so the applicant is doing his part to improve it. That's it. What do we look a gift horse in the mouth for? Checking his teeth. I don't know why.
Dr. Greeley, do you have any comments on the interior comments that were made as opposed to the off-site improvements?
So interior-wise, a couple of things. So we agree with teeing. So the layout there was to maintain the basic alignment as you come in off Underhill
Right.
and the circulation road in front of the mansion. But we looked at, there's nothing that stops us from teeing that up. So, teeing that up and controlling it, that works. We would move some parking spaces around. So that's an easy fix. We have stacking there with that teeing up. If you know the property there where the sign was with the school,
Yeah.
that's where we would tee it up. A couple of those parking spaces would be moved around. So I think that's an easy fix, and that would be stop sign controlled. In terms of the loading area, it's really a question of, do you want a dedicated loading area? And, I look at where some of the, quote, land bank spaces were. Maybe you shift those around and you create an area that is a little bit of a bump out. So it's not a full lane or a parking space, but enough that allows traffic to get by. You think about any residential area. If a moving truck is coming in, people get around it. Part of this layout is for two-way traffic on both legs, so that if there was a blockage that happened on one side for whatever reason, it's to accommodate the traffic on either leg. In terms of the control issues, I don't see any, we can fine tune the Beaver Ridge connection. As I said, that was to be an all-way stop control. I think that's still what's being worked on. Beaver Ridge apparently had some ideas on how they wanted that to just connect on their property, but nothing drastically different than what you see here. In terms of the tandem parking, that's used in buildings, and we have 48 spaces. So there's 16. There's really a space for each unit. And then some units, which typically you pay more if you wanted to have 2 spaces. And that's not unusual with this type of a operation. I think the management of spaces on the site and the senior center, those can all be worked out. I think the usage there is going to be during the day where some of those spaces are open. And then with the office space on the weekends, when you may have more visitors coming on a weekend to some of the residences, the offices are not going to be, at full utilization for sure. So I think, the basic site plan issues can be worked out.
Okay, thank you.
And I understand the pedestrians. It's just, I think we can only do so much to get to Beaver Ridge, so.
All right.
We'll work on that.
Question on the connection to Beaver Ridge. So I think what you're showing on the site plan is a walkway that looks like it's under a canopy on the west side of that double-loaded parking area.
So once you get onto Beaver Ridge, there is a section of sidewalk there. But it's not really, kind of goes around their building and up towards the front. If people were going to be walking out to Allen, they wouldn't really walk that way because it's not the straightest path.
So
But on our site, I think we can handle any of the pedestrians.
I think on your site, you should facilitate the potential and facilitate people walking to and from, whether they have to get onto a sidewalk at the property line. Maybe that's it.
Mhm.
But, given the fact that you're proposing some commercial there, I think it makes sense that you have that ability, in particular for this population,
Yes.
to be able to walk over to those facilities. I do see them walking from Beaver Ridge across Kier, down 118 to get to, at the time it was Turco's and those situations. They don't do it any longer. I think they go, now across Kier.
Straight across.
But they are walking to get to those facilities. So
Yes. I think that's fine. That's a site plan detail, John. We can.
Rich,
It does
can I ask a question of
So,
Scott?
John, the plan does show that. I think the piece that Scott was talking about is shown there.
Okay, Scott, you mentioned 3 levels of improvements, and your recommendation was to go with the middle level, saying that the 3rd level would provide only marginal improvement. If the town were to go with the middle level that you recommend, would that foreclose someone from doing the 3rd level in the future?
No, it would not. I mean,
Okay, that's all I needed to know. Thanks.
Thank you.
So one comment of clarification related to the funding. Just so that we're clear, what the project is proposing is that middle level improvement. We're not asking you to choose, or we're not proposing. The first one was provided to you for context. And in terms of that middle level improvement, myself, Mr. Glathar's office, we're working through with the Westchester County IDA, just starting preliminary discussions for the applicant's proposal is to front, if you will, or fund the full extent of that mid-level improvement, and then the delta above the $450,000 would be recaptured on a limited abatement issue, real property tax abatement issue, through only the commercial portion of the project, through the Westchester County IDA. The town would be deriving the residential portion of the real property tax, and the abatement concept would be kind of a creative concept with the IDA, where it's not a finite period. Most tax abatement agreements are maybe a 10-year or 20-year period. This would be attached, this would have a sunsetting provision so that if the applicant's funding of the benefit that benefits the entire town and future projects, once that funding is recaptured, the tax abatement immediately expires. So that's what we're working on now, to find the solution to fund that second improvement. Because, Scott, you raised a concern earlier. Let's say if things change, the town's holding the bag on the additional costs. We're working through that issue right now. That would be a part of your final negative declaration. That would be a part of your fiscal impact analysis. So we're working through that issue now. And I think for my earlier request for the public hearing, I would suggest we table that to our special meeting on Wednesday.
Yeah, and I'm going to be honest with you, the meeting you suggested on the 26th, I cannot do. I have my own public hearing. And I'm going to struggle to get here Wednesday night because I have meetings elsewhere.
I can't do the 1st of May.
So, I don't know.
I put the dates out there. Let's discuss it in detail on Wednesday.
Yeah, I would suggest maybe working with Robin and John, right? And they'll circulate memos that what works.
Okay.
That work?
Yeah. We can do it Wednesday.
Thank you.
Have a look.
Scott, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Where did you say you teach?
SUNY New Paltz.
Oh, really? Very good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
So I have a motion to close the...
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Happy planning. Tomorrow.